like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone in attendance. The committee has under consideration the estimates of the Ministry of Municipal Affairs for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2025. I'd ask that we go around the table and have members introduce themselves for the record. Minister, if you can introduce yourself and then your officials when it comes around to your turn. My name is Garth Rosewell. I'm the MLA for Vermilion, Lloydminster, Wainwright, and chair of the committee. We will start to my right.
Jackie Armstrong, Hominick, MLA, Fort Saskatchewan, Vaporville.
MLA for Grand Prairie, Nolan Dick.
Miles McDougall, MLA, Calgary Fish Creek.
Grant Hunter, Tabor Warner.
Scott Sinclair from Lesser Slave Lake.
Good evening, Jennifer Johnson, MLA for Lacombe Ponoka. And my assistant, Rebecca Lees, to my right.
Rick McIver, MLA for Calgary Hayes, the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Here I have with me my Deputy Minister, Brandy Cox, Shakib Siddiqui, Assistant Deputy Minister of Financial Services and Senior Financial Officer, Ethan Bain, our Assistant Deputy Minister of Municipal Assessment and Grants, and Gary Sandberg, Assistant Deputy Minister of Municipal Services.
My name is Kyle Kozowski. I'm MLA for Sherwood Park, and I am the critic for Alberta NDP.
Samir Kayande, Calgary Elbow.
Nathan Ip, MLA for Edmonton Southwest.
Good evening, Heather Sweet, MLA for Edmonton Manning.
Warren Huffman, Committee Clerk.
Okay, we have a substitution, Heather Sweet for Marlon Smith as Deputy Chair. A few housekeeping items before we return to the business at hand. Please note the microphones are operated by Hansard staff. Committee proceedings are live streamed on the internet and broadcast on Alberta Assembly TV. The audio and video stream transcripts of the meeting can be accessed via the Legislative Assembly website. And please set your cell phones and other devices to silent for the duration of the meeting. Honorable members, the main estimates for Ministry of Municipal Affairs shall be considered for 3 hours. Standing Order 59.01 sets out the process for consideration of the main estimates in legislative policy committees. Suborder 59.01 bracket 6 sets out the speaking rotation for this meeting. Speaking rotation chart is available for the committees on the committee's internal website, and hard copies have been provided to the ministry officials at the table. For each segment of the meeting, blocks of speaking time will be combined only if the minister and the member speaking agree. If debate is exhausted prior to 3 hours, the ministry's estimates are deemed to have been considered for the time allotted in the main estimate schedule, and the committee will adjourn. Should members have any questions regarding speaking time or rotations, please email or message the committee clerk about the process. With the concurrence of the committee, I will call a 5-minute break near the midpoint of the meeting. However, the 3-hour clock will continue to run. Does anyone object to a 5-minute break? Okay, good. Ministry officials who are present may, at the discretion of the minister, address the committee. Ministry officials seated in the gallery, if called upon, have access to the microphone in the gallery area and are asked to please introduce themselves for the record prior to commenting. Pages are available to deliver notes or other materials between the gallery and the table. Attendees in the gallery may not approach the table. Space permitting, opposition caucus staff may sit at the table to assist their members. However, members have the priority to sit at the table at all times. Points of order will be dealt with as they arise, and individual speaking times will be paused. However, the block of speaking time in the overall 3-hour meeting will continue to run. Any written material provided in response to questions raised during the main estimate should be tabled by the minister in the assembly for the benefit of all members. Finally, the committee should have the opportunity to hear both questions and answers without interruption during the estimate debate. Debate flows through the chair at all times, including instances when speaking time is shared between the member and the minister. I would now like to invite the Minister of Municipal Affairs to begin with your opening remarks. You have 10 minutes.
Well, thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. I'm here, as said, to present the Budget 2024 highlights for Alberta Municipal Affairs and some details of our 2024 to 2027 business plan. I've already introduced the officials at the table with me, so I won't repeat that. There's some other senior leaders, however, and staff from my department with us here this evening who are available to speak to the minister's budget if it turns out that that will be helpful. So I'd like to open my remarks to the committee with a story that I would call success that has been years in the making. It is my pleasure to inform you that Municipal Affairs has launched the Local Government Fiscal Framework, which will deliver predictable funding to municipalities and Métis settlements across Alberta for many years to come. We are introducing the LGFF with a benchmark of $722 million in capital funding for the 24-2025 fiscal year. This is the largest single line item in the Municipal Affairs overall budget of more than $1.2 billion, and it comes to no surprise probably to anyone here. So when the government first took office, our government in 2019, we got serious about finding a way to give municipalities the kind of funding arrangement they had long been asking for, a true funding partnership with the province of Alberta that was tied to provincial revenues. Since then, we've been talking with local community leaders across the province about what the funding framework should look like, and now it is finally here. I could not tell you how many conversations I have had on this topic over the years, but it would be only a fraction of the time that the staff at Municipal Affairs have spent engaging with local officials as everyone worked together to get this right. My cabinet colleagues and I know the amount of time and effort and ingenuity that went into developing the LGFF, and your work is greatly appreciated. That goes not only for the Government of Alberta staff, but for all the officials of local governments who worked with us to reach this goal. Truly, we could not have created and launched the LGFF without you. All of Alberta's municipalities and Métis settlements have known for a long time that the initial capital funding benchmark for the LGFF would be set at $722 million. We set that benchmark to keep capital funding for municipalities consistent with the average funding amount they have received over the last 3 years through the Municipal Sustainability Initiative. We also committed that no municipality would receive a year-to-year reduction in capital funding in the first year as we transition to LGFF, and Budget 24 does include $2.2 million in top-up funding that will be shared among 9 communities to keep them consistent with last year's MSI funding. In addition, municipalities outside of Calgary and Edmonton will share $60 million in operating funding from the LGFF, a commitment that we doubled in last year's budget. This is equivalent to the operating funding that these same municipalities received last year from the MSI program, which the LGFF now replaces. I refer to the municipalities of Alberta as our LGFF partners because that is truly what they are. The framework and the legislation that supports it includes a revenue index factor that ties the municipal funding levels to the province's overall revenue from 3 years prior. This means that municipal funding will rise or fall with the fortunes of the province on a 1-to-1 ratio that is based on the province's revenue. For example, we already know that the LGFF funding next year, that's the year that starts a week and a year from now, April 1st next year, will increase by just over 13% to $820 million, which is a $98 million increase over this year, based on the provincial revenues from the 2022-2023 fiscal year. That's the revenue index factor at work, and that's how local governments told us they wanted it to work. They already know what their LGFF funding allocations will be for next year, which helps them with their planning. That's the kind of predictability our municipal partners have been waiting for many years. The partnership also provides sustainability for Alberta's finances. As you'll see in the Budget 2024 documents, we already know that the LGFF funding is predicted to decrease the year after next year by about 1.5% to about $808 million in the 2026-27 fiscal year. That's pretty close to the final numbers because this fiscal year doesn't end for another week, so the week has to go by and then an appropriate amount of time for the accountants to do their work to get the final number. But the point is, municipalities will know a couple years ahead what their funding will be, and that's what they've always said they wanted to know so they could plan. So the estimate is based on our current forecast, which we think is pretty close because the year is almost over. The 2026 numbers have not been, as I said, finalized yet, and that will come quick enough. Just as it did when we did the calculations for the 2024 and 2025 when we announced the final allocation formula last December. In this manner, the LGFF is providing predictability and transparency, two qualities that any partner would want in a funding arrangement. Budget 2024 provides $2.4 billion over 3 years in LGFF funding to help local infrastructure priorities. Our municipal partners know what they are getting, they know what to expect, and that is entirely the point of the LGFF predictability. Now, it comes as no surprise to hear that some Alberta communities feel that the LGFF benchmark of $722 million does not provide enough capital funding. Well, when the mayors and reeves of Alberta and municipalities tell us they're not getting enough money, that's proof positive that they're good at their job, because that is part of their job, is to advocate for their municipalities to the province to get as much funding as they can. And we're not offended to hear that. We just give them credit for being in support of their residents and voters as taxpayers as they should be. But we also need to keep in mind that we worked hard together to achieve a more sustainable municipal funding model. The LGFF does that, and it's here to stay. But that doesn't mean our government has stopped listening. Quite the opposite. We have heard loud and clear that some Alberta communities are experiencing significant pressure on local infrastructure due to population growth. Well, we're not going back to the days of overspending. With Budget 24, we are introducing the Local Growth and Sustainability Grant, even as we roll out the LGFF. This new grant program will allocate $60 million over 3 years to help relieve some of the pressure on local infrastructure in high-growth communities where the need is most acute. The Local Growth and Sustainability Grant is part of our plan, our responsible plan for a growing province, and we are excited to see what kinds of infrastructure projects it will help build, supporting Alberta's economic growth and sustainability for municipalities. We will share more details about the application criteria for this new grant coming in the coming months, and anticipate receiving applications in the fall of this year. Clearly, our government recognizes the value of investing in local infrastructure and the boost such projects can bring to local economies. That's why Municipal Affairs is providing $29.6 million over the next 2 years to support construction, amongst other things, but the 29.6 of the community rink that is part of the Calgary Event Center project. Municipal Affairs will also continue coordinating and administering funding support from the federal government to local communities in Alberta. Budget 2024 includes a projected $266.2 million from the Canada Community Building Fund. It also includes $24.1 million from the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. We will continue to administer both these programs to provide more capital support to Alberta communities. Grant Budget 2024 also includes $38.1 million for the municipalities as grants in place of taxes. That's a $2.1 million increase from last year to cover additional provincial properties and increased assessment values for eligible properties. We are also continuing our support for public libraries with operating grants remaining at $33.6 million, which will help achieve our business plan goal of making library services more accessible to Albertans. If you recall, we increased funding for libraries in Budget 2023, and that same robust support continues in Budget 2024. Budget 24 also provides $7.9 million to support the work of the Land and Property Rights Tribunal, which remains focused on protecting property rights and resolving disputes and compensation issues related to property assessment, land use, and surface rights. Our business plan also includes protecting Albertans in other ways, including oversight of the safety code system and new home buyer protections. We will continue working with our municipal and industry partners to improve our performance and grow Alberta's reputation as one of the most affordable and reliable places in the country to build, buy, and own a home. In closing, I would mention once again that we have successfully launched the Local Government Fiscal Framework, which is a major achievement for municipal affairs. The overall increase of $273.3 in our budget is primarily due to the transition from MSI to LGFF and reflects that $722 million baseline. We are also supplementing the LGFF capital funding with $60 million over the 3 years with the Local Growth and Sustainability Grant. We will administer federal funding for Alberta communities and essentially maintain funding levels for other existing programs as we pursue the objectives of our business plan. So that, Mr. Chair, after that, I would be happy to answer questions that this committee may have about the municipal affairs budget for the fiscal year starting April 1st, 2024.
Thank you, Minister. We will now begin question and answer portion of the meeting. For the first 60 minutes, members of the official opposition and the minister may speak. Honorable members, you will be able to see the timer on the speaking block, both in the committee room and on Microsoft Teams. I would ask if, Member Kososki, are you gonna be doing the talking? Would you like to share time with the minister?
Yeah.
Yeah, minister, are you block or share?
Mr. Chair, let's share the time.
Okay, so we'll go share, so you've got 60 minutes of time to go on. Thank you very much.
And just a clarification, Chair, if I'm ceding time during the sharing, that's,
You can do that, yeah, that's fine.
okay, great, thanks. Well, thanks for those opening remarks, perfect time, right on the nose there with 10 minutes. Right, good. Thank you, Chair. It's my pleasure to be here to discuss municipal affairs estimates. Thank you, Minister, for being here today, and to also to all of your staff that are here from finance and from municipal affairs. And thanks to my caucus staff and colleagues that have put a lot of effort into preparing for today. Just a personal story, my oldest daughter in first year university thought she wanted to study political science, and they had to review budgets of former Canadian governments, which were actually smaller than our current budget, which was interesting. I found it so interesting. I was very excited about this assignment for her. And now she studies biochemistry. She has no interest at all in this. Just a little bit where we're from, and so maybe some of the questions, there might be some local bias coming from Strathcona County and Sherwood Park, and coming from Calgary and Edmonton here. I hope that's acceptable. This is not question period. I welcome written responses if something comes up and it's a good question to get back. I do want to help municipalities in whatever way I can, and I know I can say the same for all of my colleagues. We love this province. We want to succeed, so let's get to work. Yeah. The Ministry Business Plan should be considered in conjunction with all the budget documents, so we think we've done a decent review of the fiscal plan and the government strategic plan and estimates, and together with some of the relevant developments and news stories that are out in the public that we can maybe bring forward in relation to the budget. And we'll hopefully have a good dialogue, so I appreciate you sharing time. Maybe we'll start focus just on local funding, which you started talking about at the beginning. So this is just drawing upon, I guess, initially government estimates, line 12 on page 173 under capital grants. You touched on it, the local government and sustainability grant, and I get the impression we might not get too deep into this today, but how did you arrive at the $20 million annually? The high growth communities, do you have mid-sized cities in mind for that? And I'll just stop it there. So the type of communities you have in mind that are high growth, and how the $20 million was arrived at.
Well, I guess I'll start, the easier question is how did we arrive at the $20 million? I asked for more, and that's what Treasury Board gave me.
Okay.
So I always said, Treasury Board is where dreams go to die. And I can't be too hard on them because I sat on Treasury Board for a long time, and ministers usually with the best of intentions walk in saying, I've got this great idea, and Treasury Board pretty much says, that is a great idea. And then they say, but we can't fund it because we have to also look after the taxpayer. So, but in fairness, they also fund things too, which is all the great programs we have across not just my ministry, but all the other ones. And in this case, I might not have got everything I asked for, but we got this. Now, you asked what is intended for. It's intended to help in two specific areas. The primary area is that we ask municipalities to work with us as their provincial government, and economic development, bringing in new jobs, opportunities, and growth is one of our high priorities. We ask them to help with that. And we recognize that when municipalities do, they hold up their end, which they do all the time, and bring in new jobs, opportunities, and growth, that sometimes that comes with infrastructure pressures. Whatever it happens to be, water treatment, sewer treatment. Sometimes they say, well, my employees won't work here unless you got a better park or arena, whatever. And while this isn't intended to pay for all of that, it's intended to look for opportunities where we can support those things. So that's probably the primary reason for the program. The secondary reason for the program is some municipalities just get in a place where they need to get over a hump to be sustainable. And we're hoping there will be some places where we can do that. Now, again, it's not a huge program, but a lot of municipalities are excited about it. We're pleased about it, And my goal is to, when we talk here again next year, to have some great stories about how we were successful and how we use these funds in partnership with municipalities to actually make a positive difference that Albertans will appreciate.
Great, thank you very much. And so back to my local area, Strathcona County has a lot of new development. One of them is Bremner, which is going to be a community with a population as large as Sherwood Park in Strathcona County. And it's previously just been adjacent to a farmer's field, and so they know that they have already mapped out future infrastructure they would need to access to maybe get into this high-growth node. That's kind of, it wouldn't be wrong to direct them towards that fund. It would be okay to direct them towards
As
that.
long as you don't tell them they're gonna get it all.
Sure.
Because a few people, actually, you know, I love municipalities, because some have actually said, oh, I know what to do with those $20 million, send it to me and you're gonna look great. I said, yeah, well, there's 330 roughly municipalities, and then you'd say, well, I should know the answer to that, but the fact is, I always say about 330, because there's always several municipalities in some stage of considering amalgamation or something or another, so I'm always afraid to say it exactly, because one of you guys will say, you see, you're wrong, you don't even, but the fact is, it's in a bit of constant flux, so I do my best to be slightly inexact on that, because there's a number of municipalities in the process of joining together or dissolving or something like that. So the point is, though, there's $20 million a year and there's 330 municipalities. So we're challenged municipalities to work together with us to make us look good, make them look good, and to please Albertans. When Albertans see how the money is spent, say, okay, that's a good idea that the government and the municipality work together to spend the money on this project and in this particular way.
Great, thank you. What you teed up with was the local government fiscal framework, and I'm a fan of robust policy. I do think this is a good piece of robust policy, so compliments to all the staff, or if you have a key person you want to point out, compliments to them. It's a good piece of work.
Well, it's not just the staff, but the fact is this is the municipalities program.
Yep.
They asked for this. In fact, they got quite specific about it. So I'm proud to have delivered it as the minister. This is just us, the Alberta's government saying yes to the municipalities. That's exactly what this is. They asked for it, they got it.
Right. They did ask for a bigger pot of money. That's not a question.
That's also true. We might argue about some things tonight, but we're not gonna argue about that. They did ask for more money.
The funding amounts in subsequent years, as you laid out, will reflect the percentage change in provincial revenues from 3 years prior. I don't know if my hand directions are going in the right direction. But, so if the government follows through with a tax cut on personal income like it's been proposed, or a corporate income tax that lowers government revenue, will that lower GFF funding down the road, potentially?
Yeah, potentially. Every piece of Alberta revenue, whether it goes up or down, but I don't know, most years, if you look at the history of Alberta, there are many years where it goes down, but the big majority of years, revenue does go up. So I guess the other point too is, I suppose, if the tax cut, personal income tax cut happens, there'll be more money for people to spend, and that actually might drive more provincial revenue too, depending upon how they choose to spend that money.
Yeah, I guess it's worth maybe modeling, like, if you do a tax cut 1 year, it's not necessarily gonna lead to more revenue the next year, which will affect 3 years down the road.
Oh, okay, no, my deputy just said fiscal policy is excluded from that. Now, maybe somebody wants to put some meat on that, I'm not, you asked the question and we're gonna, what's that mean?
Yes.
Thank you, Minister. So, the Local Government Fiscal Framework Act lays out that when we're calculating the revenue change from basically 4 years ago to 3 years ago, deliberate government decisions, fiscal policy decisions that change the revenue are not counted in that first year. So if we make a decision to, raise or lower provincial revenues through a policy decision and deliberately do so, that is not counted in the percentage change calculation.
So it may eventually make a difference, but in the first year, we've so that we don't artificially bump it one way or another, then there's a delay, let me say that.
Sure, like a first-year buffer on any decisions made. Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay. For the LGFF formula, education TAC requisitions collected by Edmonton and Calgary are factored into the grants for our two largest cities. Many mid-sized cities contribute mightily to the provincial education taxes as well. I only have the 22 numbers, but Strathcona County was 70 million, Spruce Grove about 45 million, Red Deer about 44 million, St. Albert about 36 million, Airdrie about 33 million, Cochrane 16 million. Can you go over why education taxes are collected by our two major cities into the LGFF, but not the mid-sized cities, if I'm understanding things correctly?
That's apparently the formula that Edmonton and Calgary asked for. It was a negotiation with the municipalities. Essentially, this is us saying yes to the municipalities, and that was one of the things that came out of the discussions.
Okay. And then maybe the mid-sized cities weren't pushing for it as an idea?
The mid-sized cities are pretty pushy, and I say that as a compliment to them, not a shot. They're not afraid to ask for what their citizens need. In fact, I think if mid-sized cities are watching, they'll say, "You're darn right, we're aggressive and pushy because our citizens deserve it," and I'm not troubled by that.
Okay, okay, all right. Page 173 of budget 2024 estimates for municipal affairs, under capital investment, 2024-25 estimate is for $550,000 for assessment services. And the forecast for last year was $5 million, which was a noticeable discrepancy. I didn't know if it was a typo or if we spent $5 million on assessment services this year, but we're only budgeting $500,000 this year.
Oh, who's got?
And actually, the last part, I actually don't know what assessment service is, what that does. So.
Well, I'm gonna ask my assistant deputy minister to lay that out for you, and it's an important number for us to explain to.
So, just briefly, assessment services does at least three important things to be aware of. One is it looks after assessment and taxation legislation and policy in the province, so the sections of the Municipal Government Act that lay out how municipalities can assess property and then tax that property for revenue. The second thing is there's an assessment audit function there that sort of validates local assessment functions. And the third thing, and the largest area of expenditure for us, is we're actually directly responsible for assessing what's called designated industrial property in the province. So major plants, oil and gas facilities, basically anything that is regulated by the Alberta Energy Regulator, the Alberta Utilities Commission, or various federal regulators. We are actually responsible for assessing their value for taxation purposes. The line item you're referring to, the capital expenditure, is associated with an IT system that we have in development right now. And so there's actually some shifting of cash flows year to year because, like many IT projects, that one has not progressed as quickly as we might have anticipated. And so there's previous years' funding that was allocated that is actually still being used. And so we didn't need as much funding in the current year.
Did you say IT or IP?
IT.
Okay, all right.
It's capital, right? So
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll talk a little bit maybe about the capital grants for the Calgary Event Center and Community Rink, that $14,600,000 that is allocated this year. Can you expand on the overall scope of the project, if you have any sense of construction timelines or project development timelines that we're in, and maybe just about the benefits for the economy that you see coming from the event center?
Well, okay, and the event center itself, the arena, if you will, the big arena where the professional hockey, we didn't contribute anything to that. The Ministry of Transportation delivered a bunch of local road improvements and stuff like that outside of the realm of my ministry. What our ministry is doing is contributing to the community arena, the ones that where kids will play and amateurs and all that kind of stuff. And of course, that's obviously an important amenity for the city, as all arenas are. But this one in the central area, and it's also part of the event center and the whole ball of wax there that includes the big arena. It includes the BMO Center, that'd be the only Class A convention center in Western Canada and the first Class A convention center in Western Canada. Not that we're paying for any of that through municipal affairs, but the point is, it's part of something that will, and I'm saying this because you asked about economic development. This will drive economic development when you get when we can now get the world's biggest conventions. And let's face it, we need that in Calgary. We've got it was 4,750 full-time jobs during creation, 1,536 permanent jobs, 8,000 projected new residents in that district. We think 3 million plus annual visitors to that district per year. 500 events. And the other thing is 4 million square feet of mixed-use development. And the other thing that matters is there's a large amount of Class A and Class B office space in downtown Calgary that's empty, and we'll never fill it up unless you've got in a city, of over 1.5 million people, unless you got a full suite of arts and culture amenities. And sports is part of culture, of course, right? Yep. So, so that's the economic development potential is massive. We need to, continue working with the city to make sure we realize all of that. But having the amenities, I think, will be a big boost. And again, Calgary used to get a major amount of their property tax realized from downtown. That's been dropped dramatically since the rental value has decreased, since there's 30 or 40% of it. I don't know the exact number, but a high percentage that's vacant. So to whatever extent that these developments can trigger more leases, more rental space, and use that Class 1 and 2 office space that should go for a higher rental rate, the better off the Calgary's, and by extension Alberta's economy should be better, and we should all benefit.
So just a quick question, and if you don't know the answer, how many sheets of ice are we talking about at this community rink?
1, I think. Yep. 1.
Oh.
No, I believe 1. It's one arena, and I guess the amount of money that we're putting into it is limited. So I guess if we put our 30 million in, if they can get 12 sheets of ice, bless their hearts. But I don't think they will get 12. I can't imagine they'll have more than 2, and it might be 1. But there is 2 if you consider the arena that we're not contributing to and the community arena that we are contributing to. But either way, the government of Alberta, the people of Alberta's contribution is maxed at the $30 million.
Okay.
So I hope they get 6, but I don't really think they will.
6 sheets of ice.
They won't. I think you recognize I'm being...
Just thinking about tournaments.
Yep.
But, well, I think it's, I might as well I was gonna say this at the end, but I might as well segue into this, but I guess for Edmonton, the question would be, where's their arena deal? And so it's been brought up to me, the work that they have to do with the exhibition grounds, with demolition, I think their cost is over $37 million. They gotta take down some horse barns to be demolished as well. Is there any entertainment or consideration for that?
Well, I think it's generally accepted that Edmonton had their arena deal long before Calgary did, and that's the Rogers Centre. There is ongoing some debate over whether Edmonton got a better deal or Calgary, and I guess there's a number of factors about how much sooner they got it, the inflation, all that kind of stuff. And at some point, I'm sure we'll sit down with Calgary and Edmonton, and there'll be some kind of a reckoning, and somebody will be asking for more money to even it up, and we'll deal with that. But it's not in this year's budget.
Yeah, I don't think the Edmonton one had any provincial funds, or did it?
Oh.
It did?
I think you'll find that, yes. Okay. I know there was a former mayor that said it didn't, but there's a community revitalization levy that, where are we here? About $622 million in property taxes, about $168 million considered to represent the education property tax portion of the CRL revenues. That's of the 6 CRLs operation in Alberta. So is there anything specific here for the Edmonton capitals? Anyways, there's substantial. I don't have that number ahead. Like I said, there's going to have to be a reckoning, but there was, through the community revitalization levy, Edmonton got quite a benefit from provincial tax that we did without to contribute towards that, and as will Calgary, and because they're both are good at their jobs, they'll both say, I need more because I didn't get a fair deal. And at some point, like I said, we'll have to sit down, our government and theirs, it may not be my ministry, but do some kind of a reckoning for that.
Sorry, I don't know how community revitalization levy
Well, it's a program to redevelop brownfield sites. And what it basically says, for 10, 20, or 30 years, a period of time, that the city will do without their property tax, or just take the base level of property tax, say they get $5 million out of an area, that's all they get, and they put investment in and get more, and they gotta leave that in there. And during that period of time, the province forgoes the education property tax, and that goes in there to develop too. It's a partnership between the province and the municipality to redevelop brownfield sites that might sit forever and never get redeveloped, and might be a blight on the community except for this extra effort. So it's a program that government and municipalities have together in order to achieve that.
Okay, thank you.
There's a lot more details, but that gives you a
That
flavor
gives me a pretty good
of what it
understand.
is.
Okay, I think I was still going through estimates. If we went to page 172, line 9.3, I notice there's a slight reduction in the residential protection program. So if I understand that correctly, this is for supporting new home buyer protection through new home warranty. And so are new home forecasts expected to drop? Or where did your department obtain the forecast?
I know there's record construction starts, and have been for some time. On how that relates to the new home warranty variance. Okay, there's $103,000 decrease in supplies and services primarily related to one-time IT costs included in 23-24.
Okay.
$150,000 building licensing, and it's offset by $64,000 increase in salaries and wages to address public sector compensation and other inflationary pressures.
Okay, so you're sort of trying to keep it flat maybe?
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's self-funding, isn't it? It's not a taxpayer-funded item. We charge, it's
Right.
intended to charge enough to pay for the program. It's not intended to be a profit center nor a cost center for the government, but rather self-funding through the fees charged.
Perfect, I understand that. Okay, capital grants, 6.5, the investing in Canada infrastructure, community and culture and recreation. I know you mentioned some Canada grants. I hope I'm not covering the same ones you did in your opening. This provides capital funding for municipalities under federal portion of community, culture, and recreation stream, and I understand it's competitive and it's cost shared jointly, funded by Canada, Alberta, and municipalities. And so, in 2023, 4.2 million was budgeted. The total amount of the forecast is now for almost 12.5 million to be spent on that. But the estimate for 24-25 on the investing in Canada infrastructure is nil. And so can you explain why there's nothing estimated for this capital grant and what's going on with it?
Okay, as the projects get completed, no more money's required, and do we know yet from the feds what they're going to, this is the Canada, this flow through, right, from the federal government?
ISIP is cost share.
Oh, okay. Oh, I said, okay, all right, ISIP is cost share, and what I'm told is that as the projects get completed, there's no more budget. Will that number change coming up?
For 24-25, no.
No, that's the final number. What's been completed, which might interest you, is City of Brooks sanitary wastewater replacement, and a water lift station, City of Red Deer, community arena expansion, Millet, Agriplex upgrade, Drayton Valley net zero aquatic facility, Village of Consort aquatic facility upgrades, Municipal District of Bonnyville, Canuso Ridge Adventure Park, Municipal District of Acadia Valley Community Hall. The ISIP funds are reimbursed to recipients based on the actual claim costs that are submitted. So the current budget decrease is a cash flow adjustment that reflects more up-to-date anticipated cash requirements needed by the recipients to fund the projects over the next year. And the projects are underway. There's no change to the total estimated funding. However, there is variances in the anticipated timing of the cash flow in any construction project. Sometimes you get all the work done one year, and sometimes you get freeze up in the year, or just don't get the workers or the materials in on time, and the project lays over until the next year. So the ISIP cash flow funding is dependent on the submission of expenditure claims by the recipients, and that's just the up-to-date what we believe will happen.
Okay, I appreciate that. Page 175, I think this is still in estimates. There's a reduction in the investment capital, and I realize this is for capital assets, but for Safety Codes Council, it kind of stood out to me. So I see that, that it was, there's down in the capital expenses for Safety Codes Council, not in the, so capital investment, there is a reduction, it seems like, coming in the Safety Codes Council.
Yep. Okay, find that for you. But Safety Codes Council is another one of those self-funding things. We do the inspections on a lot of construction things.
Okay.
We have in a lot of cases, the municipalities, certainly the larger ones, are licensed to be safety codes authorized deliverers, if you will, where they employ and use and have use safety codes officers to inspect construction and all that kind of stuff. And the fees are okay. We have Rob Bennett here from the Safety Codes Council. Mr. Bennett, you want to
Okay.
would you like to hear it from the horse's mouth? We
Sure,
can try to,
sure, yeah.
and I mean that with all respect to Mr. Bennett.
Yeah.
Let's get you the most direct answer that we can.
Okay.
Just for clarity, you were speaking to a reduction in capital, is that correct?
Introduce yourself for the
Of
record.
course, yes. Rob Bennett, CEO, President and CEO of Safety Codes Council. Happy to address the group. And just for clarity, the question was about a capital reduction, is that correct?
Yeah, and I thought I had that was, yeah, this is for, I've got the page here, but it's the safety codes, we've got for voting for supply, you've got nil coming in for it. And this is a capital investment, so there might just be no project. It's on page 175. Under, right below municipal assessment grants, there is nothing for Safety Codes Council.
I see.
Page for Mr. Bennett.
It might be, we can, it's not really,
Get the page for Mr. Bennett here.
yeah, page 175, middle of the page.
Can somebody hand him the page?
I apologize. Thank you.
Well, he's looking up. I'll go on to the next question. You know, so it's been asked by Alberta municipalities. They brought up the question of with the $200 fee for EVs, will any of that revenue be shared with municipalities?
I
In
would
terms of,
say no. That's not in our ministry, that $200. That's, so, but, so I guess technically, since it's not my budget, I can't say for sure, but I'm, not that I'm aware of, I don't believe it. No, that shared with municipalities mine, and I would say the answer is no.
okay.
I don't think that's what it's intended for. I think it's kind of a replacement for the taxes that people would otherwise pay on gasoline, which is certainly part of that is considered to help pay for the roads. And,
Yeah.
and of course, EVs get to go by the gas stations and good for them, but the roads still need to be fixed, maintained, and provided for those vehicles.
yeah, so then would that just go into general revenue? Like I just, right now, whatever it is, 9,000.
It might be kind of a treasury board or somebody else, sorry, it's not,
That's okay.
we don't get the money in municipal affairs. I can comfortably
Yeah.
say that to
Okay,
you.
that sounds good. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. And if we can switch over to one of my
Do
favorite.
you want me to see if Mr.
Oh, you're
Benefits?
ready, yeah, and sorry, hopefully I read it right.
Just for clarity, the capital investment budget is 194, so there may have been a misunderstanding. I'm looking at the page.
It's in the reconciliation of supply vote, consolidated government estimate. And it's just the vote, what we're voting on for supply, there is nothing voting on for supply code council. So,
Again, I'm referencing the same page, and the capital investment is 194, so.
I think Sadiq has some insight there.
Sure, so,
Happy to address the budget, I just want to be clear on the question.
sure, so sorry, that particular reconciliation table is talking about the different authorities under which we have our appropriation. So for Safety Codes Council, they are statutory, they are not voted. So that's why in that, if you look at all the column headings, there's a 0 for voted because their budget is not voted, it is statutory. So the 194 that you see is the total value of their capital investment. There are no comparator numbers on that line.
okay, perfect. Yeah, that helps. Okay, appreciate that. And I'd like to talk about preferential lending rate to municipalities and bring that up. I know this is Treasury, but it would be great if you advocate within Cabinet, because I think it makes a difference. So, investment income loans to local authorities, I noticed, this is in the overview of the fiscal plan on page 18. I noticed that investment loans are declining. This year, 677 million. Next year, 561 million. The year after that, it's 522 million. Is it declining because of the end of the preferential lending rate for municipalities, or how that was eliminated?
That's a Treasury Board thing, really.
Okay.
What I believe I know part of is that we have paid down some debt. I know our rating for the rating agencies has gone up. I don't know how that reflects in the cost of borrowing that we have, but that would also cascade to some degree to the cost of lending to the municipalities.
Okay.
But I don't know, but the amount, that's a Treasury Board question.
Okay. I might come back to that, but in a different, just when we come to how you borrow money, but that might be, we'll just get primed for that. So under expenses for the fiscal plan, the province is, says it's managing the pressures from rapid population growth. Alberta's population increased by an estimated 184,000, that's 4.1% in 2023, and it's projected to surpass 5 million in 2026, an increase of more than 500,000 Albertans from 2022. And this budget is the responsible plan that addresses our key priorities and pressures, maintains balanced budgets, and sustains Alberta's growth and prosperity. So that's just from the fiscal plan. The budget's not keeping pace with population growth and inflation. So just in your own view, how are you investing in this growth?
I think our staff is working hard. I think that they are getting the work done without a big expansion in staff. Deputy, would you care to expand upon that at all?
Sure. So I do think that I just want to make sure that I'm answering your question, which I think is about, I think what you're getting at, but please correct me through the chair, is that the extent to which municipal funding programs are indexed to inflation. Is that the question that you're asked? Yes. And so to that, I would say that the minister has already laid out all of the ways in which the local government fiscal framework addresses things that generally relate to growth with respect to the revenue index factor, which went to a 1-to-1 ratio as municipalities requested. And so there isn't an indexing per se, but as the economy grows and GDP increases and our revenue increases, there are correlations then to the increases or decreases that we see with respect to that funding formula.
But we somewhat keep up with, there's a bit of an indexing factor in that there's more people than they pay more taxes to the provincial government, either directly or through their other activities. And it's not a direct straight line inflationary pop, but there's certainly that effect that you get more people pay more taxes, and that drives some of, not all, but some of the government's revenue.
Okay. Okay, let's switch over to water treatment. The capital plan, fiscal plan, page 104, 539 has been included, includes funding for Alberta that's page 104 of the fiscal plan.
Municipal affairs?
Yep.
Good.
Well, fiscal plan would be the general fiscal plan.
Yeah, well, water treatment, certainly the capital contributions pretty much come from transportation, I think.
Oh, okay.
As a former transportation minister, I don't want to cut that minister's grass or answer for that minister, but when I was there, that's where the funding for municipal water and wastewater stuff came out of, and not from municipal affairs.
Well, maybe, fair enough.
I know people think government's not organized, but I'm making a quick argument for you that they are. Rather than have 22 or 26 ministries with construction companies,
yep,
we're well organized enough that we essentially have two ministries that are construction companies. One's called infrastructure, and they build everything vertical. The other one's called transportation, and they build everything flat. Now, vertical is largely buildings, flat is roads, bridges, dams, that kind of stuff. Transportation builds all of that, so that way we don't have to have 22 or 26 construction companies, just two.
So water treatment gets built in which ministry?
Transportation, it's flat,
Transportation.
because it's below ground, it's flat.
So that regional water, wastewater projects, the Water for Life project, that's
Transportation.
transportation. Well, that's gonna take about 10 minutes off my time.
Okay,
There is the, and
I'll
then
have
the
a
Alberta,
coffee.
the Alberta Community Partnership Grant applications, which ministry manages those? Oh, because that's, okay, well, there you go. You can help plan a water treatment plant. So Lethbridge, water treatment plant, was built 40 years ago. I think you probably know that. It's approaching capacity. I've been told it's running at 99% capacity right now. And is there any plan in the budget for the Lethbridge water treatment plant? And I'll just back that up with some context. The city services 133,000 citizens in the surrounding area, including Lethbridge County, Colehurst, Coaldale, Diamond City, Monarch, Pitcher Butte, Iron Springs, Turin, and Chin. And in the fall, council voted to support an application with the town of Coaldale and Tabor for the Alberta Communities Partnership Grant application, and they're seeking funding for high-level service analysis of potable water and wastewater infrastructure along the Highway 3 corridor. And so in municipal estimates, page 166, section 7, in the Alberta Community Partnership, it's budgeted, well, the estimate is for 15.5 million roughly. Can you provide an update on the status of the application for the Alberta Community Partnership Grant application for funding for high-level service analysis for potable and wastewater infrastructure along the Highway 3 corridor? Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. Great.
When did they apply for that?
Probably in October of 2023.
But did they get it from Municipal Affairs? I'm not sure that if they did, or whether they got it from, okay. Okay. It's application based, so they.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, and so when it comes to borrowing in the fiscal plan, for infrastructure projects, when the province borrows for infrastructure projects, what's the cost of money?
I think you're back into a treasury board thing.
I was hoping with Mr. Siddiqui here that we could.
You know, my friend, and I mean that's a treasury board question. I don't want to cut my fellow minister's grass, and I wouldn't want to get a detail wrong and then have another minister liable for something in his ministry that I didn't answer correctly.
Fair enough. Would you consider combining municipal debt with the provincial debt?
That's kind of a government-wide decision, and I guess I don't understand why or how you would want to do that. You're into the theoretical now instead of what's actually in our budget. I don't understand why you would want to do that and how that would work in your mind.
Well, so for example, let's say a water treatment plant and the province covers, let's say 10-20% of the capital cost. The municipalities are going to have to borrow the rest. They're borrowing at a higher rate than the government of Alberta borrows at right now. And so they're taking on that debt. It's off the province's books, but it's at a higher rate, and so it's going to cost taxpayers, citizens more money. And so the consideration is just, would the province consider in municipal affairs taking on municipal debt?
Yeah, that's not how we're structured now. If you were to ask if we're actively considering that in this budget, I would say no.
Okay. And if, just a question, if the municipality fails, who does the debt pass on to?
Pardon me?
So if a
I think the
municipality
province, if I'm not mistaken, historically, it's paid some municipal debt a couple times over history. That's not part of this year's budget. That's just an interesting historical question you asked. But it's not really before us, but in the past, I think there has been times and again, I'm not speaking authoritatively here. What I believe has historically happened, the province has picked up the slack for municipalities along the way at least once and I think twice. Simply because during, we have the special areas where there was widespread, and I can't talk about this because it's part of what we do now, there was widespread failure to be able to pay property taxes. A lot of it was a lot of people lost their property, and a lot of that is in the special areas right now, which is Municipal Affairs helps look after. So I guess I could reasonably say to your question, who's responsible if a municipality fails? At the very end of the day, it's probably your provincial government, our provincial government.
Yeah, and I wondered, I didn't know if that was kind of my suspicion. And so, just as municipalities are taking on debt, I know they're restricted. It just is a thought that's occurred to me.
It's for their own protection.
Yeah.
Simply because, listen, you don't have to be a lawyer, doctor, accountant, engineer, or anything to get elected. And different municipalities have different levels of sophistication. Certainly, the expression I always use is the larger municipalities have a hot and cold running lawyers, accountants, and engineers. Most municipalities of, say, 1,500 population probably don't have hot and cold running lawyers, accountants, or engineers. They might be fortunate to have one, or they might cost share one with other municipalities, or just hire them out job by job. So we have boundaries in our rules around municipalities that help protect them and helps us to help to protect them. There are cases when someone is near their debt limit that has a project that's particularly important to them. And they will occasionally ask us to extend their debt limit beyond what the legislation does, and we have the authority to do that, but we typically say no unless they have a good story to tell. And by story, I mean a plan to say we've saved up $6 million from our LGFF, our MSI, we need to borrow another $2 million that puts us over the top. But based on the new development that we already have confirmed and the taxes that'll come, we feel very confident within 3 or 5 years we'll be back within our debt limit. And that those cases similar to that, we might say yes. It's never guaranteed, though. It's all case by case, and you'll be happy to know there's people qualified, not me, within our ministry that looks at these things and makes recommendations.
Good. Yeah.
The ACP grant went to Coaldale for the $200,000 for them to partner with Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, Bow Island, Tabor, and Barnwell, and all that kind of stuff. So you asked whether we gave Lethbridge a grant, and the answer is no.
Yeah, I see.
But my colleague was right. They got the grant, but it didn't go to Lethbridge. It went to Coaldale, and Lethbridge was part of the partnership. So, just wanted, we weren't holding back from you there. But the way you asked the question, we didn't have an answer because we didn't have a grant for Lethbridge for that. But they're secondarily named in the grant that Coaldale got, and I only say that to you for two reasons: for clarity, and so that we do know what we're talking about. Because you asked about Lethbridge and the answer was no, and then I heard yes, but our colleague wasn't trying to mislead us either. The fact is the grant went to Coaldale as part of that Lethbridge and Coaldale and Friends project.
Okay. I'm probably going to be, I'm going to be focused on the business plan probably a little bit more now. And so as it relates to the business plan, there is on page 109 that municipalities, you're going to work with municipalities builders to create conditions that will increase housing supply and address housing costs. And your objective is to work with municipalities and builders to ensure the appropriate conditions are in place to help or enable municipalities to make some decisions that will grow their local housing stock. Can you just describe some of your efforts to meet this objective, or ones that are coming up?
Well, there'll be some things in legislation that hasn't been released yet, but it's coming quite soon, this spring session. So I the rules are that you can't actually talk specifically about what's in legislation until everybody gets to know it at the same time. So, if I dance it around it a little bit, we will look for ways to, reduce costs for municipalities and builders and developers when they choose specifically to build affordable housing. Beyond that, we will be looking for tools to encourage municipalities to approve, to incent them, if you will, to approve more housing of all kinds, because we need it all. We need affordable housing, we need subsidized housing, we need market housing. And government will never build and own and operate all of it. Well, in my opinion, nor should we. But we're all involved in doing it. Our government, municipalities, builders, developers, and my intention with Minister Nixon is to gather a meeting of the minds with all those groups to talk about how we can do it together. Because it's clarify code requirements for secondary suites, other building code things that might be able to be somewhat modified to help. And from the human side, it's easy for we politicians to sit around provincially and say the cities aren't doing enough, and the darn builders and developers say, well, if the city would get out of the way and the province would get out of the way. If we get everybody in the same room, and they say that, then the city might say, well, actually, if we just knew that was the problem, we could solve it. So that's our goal, is to get everybody in the same room, like everybody says, and I believe us all, that we want to help, but I believe we'll get coordinated and organized and move together faster and further if we agree on what the problems are, solve the problems together, and then get busy.
Thank you. On page 109, the business plan, it was to protect the province's constitutional right to oversee the governance of Alberta's municipalities without federal interference. Can you elaborate on what you mean about this?
Well, let me just say this. Quebec has been quite successful at telling the federal government to get out of their business and just send us the money. We don't want to pick a fight with Quebec. We want to learn from them where they do better than us. We're pretty proud of Alberta. We think you do a great job, but Quebec seems to get a better deal than a lot of places in Canada. So the Premier has included that in my mandate letter. Quebec is currently the only province that requires provincial approval for municipal federal agreements, unlike Alberta. And as a great example on why this is important, it was 3-4 weeks ago, a federal minister rolled into Alberta and committed $200 million to help build homes. And we all said, thank you. Great stuff. And then they went next door to BC with almost exactly the same population as Alberta and dropped $2 billion the next day. So we're only getting 1/10 potentially of what's fair. Something's got to change. So doing the same doesn't seem to be the answer. So we're going to try to do something different, and we're going to try to model it on a model that's demonstrably successful within the Canadian Federation.
Can you provide an update on your request to municipalities to provide their inventories of the municipal federal agreements? And
yeah, well, that's what it is. We want to make sure there's no unintended consequences. I guess a simple example would be we don't want the municipalities to lose their lease with the federal government on all the mailboxes in town. That's not our intent. We don't want that to be an unintended consequence of what we do. So to know, so that we don't have those unintended consequences, and of course, anytime you do anything, there's always a risk that you'll miss a detail, but part of our responsibility is to try not to miss the details. And part of that is to go to the municipalities and say, what are your deals? What are your agreements with the federal government? Tell us, so that we can hopefully not mess it up. Well, we're trying to get you more money from the federal government. And if I'm not mistaken, the average number of ongoing agreements that municipalities have with the federal government is 8. Is that? That's right. About 8, yes. I say about 8's the average, but some have, I suppose, 1 or 2 more, 1 or 2 less, but 8's the average. So
they have the average number of agreements, about 8 agreements?
Yeah.
Okay.
We just didn't know, because we're not party to those agreements. So the only way to know is to ask, and that's also the only way that we can try to avoid unintended consequences. What we're trying to do a great amount of good for Alberta and our municipalities is to try to avoid those unintended consequences while we're trying to help.
Okay. You know, I'm gonna move on. I was gonna explore what unintended consequences is, but I'll,
Unintended consequences is if we say you can't make any deals with the federal government without talking to us, and then the federal government says, well, we can't deliver mail anymore because you haven't got any place to deliver them to in your municipality because you lost your lease.
interesting.
Now, we hope that day would never come, but we don't want to bring it on ourselves either and bring it on municipalities. So by communicating, talking to people ahead of time, we want to avoid those unintended consequences.
To try and create some guardrails for the government to sort of flex.
No, actually, to get more money to get the fair amount of funding from the federal government in Alberta that other governments get, and we get shortchanged all the time. I know it was not very long ago that another ministry talked about, and I don't want to just gonna quote that, as there were other provinces got a whole bunch of funding for transportation projects, and I think Alberta was 0 for 9. I give you another example where we got $200 million, which we're grateful for, but BC next day got $2 billion.
Yep.
We're not getting a good deal within this federation. It's not right. The federal government shouldn't treat Alberta that way, so it's up to our government to stand up for Alberta, and that is exactly what is part of my mandate, and it's part of what our premier is trying to do for all Albertans, and we're happy to be part of that here in municipal affairs.
Thank you. In section 2.1, I think of the business plan, the Alberta local governments encourage and support economic, so section 2.1, Alberta's local governments encourage and support economic prosperity. And I think it reads, enhance municipal delivery through regional cooperation and growth management boards. I understand that, that there might be funding that's being cut to the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board and the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Board, is that correct? Or no funding is being cut to those boards?
I think it's flat, $1 million. Yeah, it's flat.
Okay, good. I heard $1 million cut, but you're saying the funding is probably staying flat at $1 million.
Yes.
Good, thank you. Actually, great.
And they asked for more. Which means it's a day that ends in Y. Because people ask for more every day.
Okay, is there any other ways that you're enhancing regional cooperation and growth management besides those two boards?
Gosh, well, we encourage municipalities to work together. They're all required to have ICFs, intermunicipal collaboration frameworks. The ACP grants we use to assist with municipal cooperation and collaboration to try to incent it and to help it along. Excuse me, and these are simple things for some municipalities and complicated for others. It depends on who's on your border, or in the case of the rurals, who's within your border. Some rurals, I'm pulling numbers out of the air, but I believe they're within the relevant range. Some rural municipalities may have 2 or 3 or 4 small urbans within their boundaries. Some might have as many as 20 or 30.
Yep.
So, and they have to have intermunicipal collaboration frameworks with all of them, and it's all intended to have them cooperate, work together, cost share, whatever, all those range of things that build community and hopefully have neighbors working together instead of feuding, although on the ground sometimes it works both ways. But we try to encourage the good way.
Sure. Section 2.38, the business plan, I think it's reviewing the Local Authorities Election Act. And the objective in the business plan is to review the Local Authorities Election Act and Municipal Governance Acts with an eye to strengthen public trust in the integrity of Alberta's election laws and improve councillor accountability to their residents. RMA passed a resolution, I think it was just yesterday, to maintain nonpartisan municipal elections with about 88% in favor. Alberta municipalities passed a similar resolution. Government estimates, the operating expense section, 2.2, municipal policy and engagement, is moving up by about $1 million from about $3.5 million last year to not quite $4.5 million this year. Is the additional money needed for work on changing the Local Municipal Governance Act to add political parties into the local election?
No, I would say to you that we review the Local Authorities Election Act every 4 years after every municipal election. And part of that process is doing our own investigations as well as listening to municipalities about what worked well for them and for Alberta in the last election and what we can change to make it work better. Okay, no, I think my assistant deputy minister is, well, we're gonna ask him to add to this. How's that?
I can just give you a very quick and simple explanation for that change in budget. It is an internal reallocation where we simply moved some staff from one area of my division into the policy and engagement because we recognized we were going to be doing an increased amount of engagement over last year and this year and next year. Thank you.
Yeah, we do policy work all the time. The Municipal Government Act is, I think, the second largest piece of legislation in the government of Alberta. Very thick, lots of stuff. Municipalities are always after us to update the Municipal Government Act in some way, and often after us to update the Local Authorities Election Act. There's some stuff coming forward and not being evasive, but again, the rules require. I can't tell you what's in the legislation coming up until I tell everybody all at once, or else somebody's rights as a member of the Legislative Assembly will be offended, and we do not want to do that.
Do not.
But I can tell you what some of the things that we're looking at. There was some municipalities were counting ballots with tabulators. And there was, I don't know how it got in there, but there was a rule in the legislation, which I guess means it's still there now, that we might have to consider changing, that if the votes are counted by a tabulator, there can be no recounts. Imagine. You don't have to imagine, because it happened. There was counts, there were several thousand votes, and in double digits were the difference in winning or losing an election, and our legislation doesn't allow a recount. Now, again, I'm sure when that went in there, it was well intended, thinking the machines don't fail, but and it might be that the machines didn't fail, but I do think, and might be some Albertans that would have felt better if, when it was that close, that we were able to take a second peek, but it was against the law. So that's something that will have to be considered in this round of changes. And that's just kind of an easy to point at, but there's lots of stuff. There's stuff where sometimes in municipalities, small municipalities, there's very few people that want to volunteer to help oversee the conduct of an election. And sometimes the municipality is quite small, and some of the people that want to oversee and can look after the conduct of the election ends up being related to somebody who's in the election. So it's, you know what, with 330 roughly municipalities and all the different variances from over 1.5 million down to some with as little few as 50 people, trying to get a set of rules that fits everybody is complex, and sometimes we got to make adjustments to try to make sure it works as well as it can under the different circumstances that crop up.
I don't know if this will be my last question, but I sense that we don't agree on this, on parties in municipal elections. Is there a business case for introducing legislation that would allow political parties at the municipal level?
If you don't mind, I would say you're asking the wrong question. Well, it's hardly relevant if there's a business case. What's relevant is that there's a demonstrable fairness in a process, in a democratic process, where that doesn't tilt the playing field one way or another. I think there's also room for rules and regulations. To be clear, there are no rules now that restrict political party activity in municipalities. It's, to coin a phrase, it's kind of the Wild West. That's when there's no rules. And I would say political party-like, I would argue that political party-like activity is happening, has happened for a long time, probably always happened, and we think it might be time to put some rules around it. I know there are those that say there is no sign of political party activity in municipal elections, and I, as someone who was elected municipally for 9 years, would say different. I identified as a conservative. I tried to behave and vote and act as somebody with a conservative ideology. There were certain people I served with that also identified that way, and others that identified differently, and all of that's okay. I mean, you know, none of it's illegal, none of it's wrong, but when it comes to large amount of monies being spent in elections to get a slate or a block of people elected, perhaps there should be some rules around it. I think having some reasonable rules around it, you could actually, since there's no rules now, and we were thinking about adding rules, you could legitimately argue that that will make it harder to have political parties. Because when you go from no rules to some rules, that technically should make it harder. Now, other people will say that makes it easier because that gives them a roadmap to create a political party. And I guess I understand that too. I don't think it holds as much water, but it's a legitimate argument. But I think having the accountability is worthwhile, and the transparency. If somebody is giving a lot of money to candidates to get a slate elected, I think it's legitimate that the public should maybe have some of that disclosed.
Okay. I think that's probably a good place to stop, Chair. Thank you, Minister.
That concludes the first portion of questions for the official opposition. We move on to the independent for 20 minutes. Would you like to share time?
I would love to share the time if the minister is willing.
You're
Mr.
willing?
Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we got
Yes,
20 minutes.
Mr. Chair. I will address my remarks through you, Chair. Yes, Chair, I would be willing to share my time.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, we got 20 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the minister and to his staff, thank you for being here. On page 11 of the ministerial business plan, performance metrics for the number of municipalities not compliant with the legislated 5-to-1 ratio, which specifies the maximum spread between non-residential and residential property tax rates. Can the minister first provide a more detailed explanation of this 5-to-1 ratio and how it is implemented practically? How is this 5-to-1 ratio determined, and is it beneficial universally?
Well, beneficial universally. Universally is a big word. I would say mostly universally it's beneficial. I think it's
Can I clarify? It was going down to the goal, the targets were going down to 2. So do you want to eventually get to 0 through the chair? Or is it good, okay to have some flexibility? Do you want this to be universal, so we're going to 0? Or does the minister think
No,
that there's
I
some
think that right now our
beneficial-
goal is just to get within 5-to-1. I think at the genesis of it, it's a legislative maximum spread between a municipality's highest non-residential property tax rate and its lowest residential property tax rate. A key to economic prosperity in municipalities is minimizing barriers to investment. In other words, attracting business, because when you attract business, you create more opportunities, more jobs, more investment, and which is actually better for the municipality as well as the people that live there. Municipalities can sometimes get caught in a trap because businesses don't vote, but people do. So it's a kind of a convenient short-term argument to say, well, we're going to put a bigger tax load on you, homeowner, and we're going to be able to, but we have increased expenses, so we're just going to put the load on businesses because they can't vote against us. And while that might be a convenient short-term strategy and a successful short-term strategy, we believe that long-term it can catch up on a municipality in a very negative way when the municipality becomes so heavily taxed on the business side that businesses no longer want to locate there. And because it's like a lot of things, there's a law of diminishing returns, if you will. In the short term, it seems convenient that the businesses that are there pay more taxes and more and more and more. And I guess as long as they're willing to pay them and able to pay them, I suppose some would say that's a good thing. But at some point, your municipality becomes unattractive to other businesses when they compare tax rates. And at some point, municipalities may even start closing and moving out. And most municipalities will actually tell you, if you talk to them, that they benefit more from non-residential taxes than they do from residential taxes. On average, there's exceptions to every rule, okay? But on average, and I guess because on residential taxpayers use a lot of services. They're the ones whose kids play in the park. They're the ones that use the arenas. They're the ones that use the rec centers. They're the ones that drive on the roads. They're the ones that call bylaw officers. They're the ones that do all that stuff where businesses, well, they certainly the businesses use the roads and the sidewalks and stuff. There's a lot of other municipal amenities they don't use, and they oftentimes pay a lot of taxes if they're a successful business, which makes them an attractive thing for municipalities to go after in order to bolster their ability to pay for their goods. So that actually can eventually turn against the municipality. So, and businesses complained about fairness, and they didn't say we need to pay the same. And I think it was negotiated, if you will, and accepted at some point that 5-1 was a reasonable spread. You could argue different numbers. I wouldn't say it's arbitrary. That's not right, but it came about as through discussions with both residents and businesses. So it's not arbitrary. And I guess you could have landed at 3-1 or 10-1, but we landed at 5-1 after those discussions. So that's what we do, and we pushed the 2016, there was 29 non-compliant communities within Alberta, and that number has steadily declined since. As of 2023, only 8 remain that are non-compliant, and we are working with them gently, I suppose, but not too gently, pressuring them to get within that 5-1 ratio. They're well aware we have the legislative authority to put the hammer down and force it, but that's not how we want it to work with our municipalities. We really want to inspire compliance and get cooperation. So that's what we're trying to do, and I would say we're making progress, but again, on the law of diminishing returns, the first progress was easy, and the late progress is a little more hard, and we're still trying to cooperate with, put pressure on, and try to inspire those remaining communities to get within that 5-1 ratio, because we think it's good for them, and we think it's good for all of Alberta.
Mr. Chair, thank you to the minister. I think inspiration is always good for everyone. You kind of went into my next question here, Minister. With that information, the result for 2022, Mr. Chair, as the minister said, was 9 non-compliant. Targets are eventually going to 2 for 2026. So can the minister explain what measures are currently being taken? Minister mentioned inspiration to work with municipalities to ensure this compliance of the 5-1 ratio.
Well, we remind them that we have the authority we didn't start out this way, but we are getting to maybe perhaps the municipalities either finding it harder to do that or maybe less inspired to do it. So we're trying to get them to be more inspired to get it done. Because if not everybody has to follow the rules, it can kind of inspire everybody else to not say, well, I don't have to follow the rules either. So we're trying to be as gentle as we can, but not so gentle that we get ignored. We haven't had to be forceful or put a hammer down or anything yet, but so we continue to, and where there's progress, we applaud and encourage the progress, and in most cases we've had some progress and we applaud it, but we don't applaud it too much because we want the progress to get all the way to the 5-1 ratio. That's our goal.
Yes. Mr. Chair, thank you to the minister. On page 113 of the Ministerial Business Plan Performance Metrics is the number of injuries and fatalities caused by structural or mechanical failure of buildings and associated systems per 100,000 in Alberta. It was 0.61 for 2022. In practical terms, this is about 6 per million. In actual numbers, that would be about 27 people. The targets for 2024 are 0.64 for 100,000. Targets do come back again to our 0.61 for 2026, but in the meantime, can the minister explain the higher target numbers for 2024 and 25, and also how do our numbers compare interprovincially?
Well, it gets measured on a regular basis, and it goes up and down. Our targets are obviously designed again to hopefully inspire and incent lower numbers. Some of the occupational health and safety rules are also designed, which don't necessarily fall completely within our ministry. We have a labor ministry that oversees that stuff. So there are other incentives too for employers to lower their injury rates on the job rates. It's good for municipalities. You can say 27's not a lot of people to get killed or injured, but if one of them's your son or daughter or mother or father or husband or wife, then that's one too many. So we like to take the attitude that any injury is one too many and any death is one too many, and try to work with people. There's some municipalities have implemented new record management systems that have caused delays in their ability to report. That can deal with some of the things. That's certainly caused gaps for 21 and 22 reporting. Ministry staff, however, work with municipalities to resolve the reporting issues. When we get the data, we recalculate using the required data, and we try to evaluate if new targets should be developed each year. We'll continue to do this. It's one of those things with no finish line. Sadly, as long as there's activity going on, somebody's gonna get hurt at some point, but that's not an excuse to let it happen. We don't let it happen. We have people within our ministry and beyond. If I understand, British Columbia had a higher number of fatalities related to gas and fire disciplines, and a similar number in other disciplines on a per capita basis. Ontario and Alberta had roughly the same number of fatalities in the fire and electrical related disciplines. Alberta slightly more fatalities in the gas discipline than Saskatchewan, but Saskatchewan has more injuries. So my point of this is not who's winning and who's losing, but rather that we do make the effort to compare as a benchmark, knowing that our ultimate goal is zero. But we got to make sure that if we're any time that we're not the lowest or amongst the lowest, there's probably something more we can do, and it's a kick in the pants for us, if you will, or a gentle reminder, if you'd rather say it that way, for us to say, okay, what can we do better? It's better for Alberta municipalities, it's better for Alberta people.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to the Minister. On page 114 of the Ministerial Business Plan, revenue, other transfers from Government of Canada are going from 30,041,000 in 2023-24 to a mere 3,280,000 in 26-27, decreasing 10 times over. Can the Minister explain what these Government of Canada transfers were and the indicated decrease?
Other transfers reflect funding received under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ISIP. It's a cost-shared program. Municipal Affairs administers the ISIP projects being carried out by municipalities under rural and northern Alberta's green infrastructure and community culture and recreation streams of the program. It's a time-limited program, so that the decline in revenue over time reflects reduced funding requirements as previously approved projects are gradually completed. Our colleague on the other side asked a bit of a similar question earlier, and I think because it was the same question, I believe we gave the same answer.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, but he asked it in a different way, so so that's the reason why that changes. It's as the projects get completed, we use up the funding, and then there's no more to report on after that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, to the Minister. In page 104 of the fiscal plan, under municipal infrastructure support, the local growth and sustainability grant program valued at $60 million over 3 years will enable municipalities to fund infrastructure that supports economic development and address unique and emergent needs in their communities. And continuing, the government is investing $539 million over 3 years to expand and enhance municipal water and wastewater infrastructure. Under the Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program, $111 million over 3 years is allocated to improve accessibility and the movement of goods and people. There are many communities in our province that could make that funding disappear overnight. Some of these communities might be called heritage communities. One such active community in my constituency, over 100 years old, is dealing with multiple and massive issues like wastewater, road maintenance, health and wellness, and other infrastructure. Can the Minister speak to the unique needs of these heritage communities and some viable options for them so they can not just survive, but to thrive?
Okay, well, that's a good question. It's some of the programs that you named are not ours. The Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program, that transportation administers that, so I can't touch on that. But certainly the local growth and sustainability grant is that $20 million per year over 3 years that I talked about in my opening remarks. And we are just putting the meat on the bones on that, about what the rules will be about that. And as I said at RMA this week and Alberta municipalities last week, we will actually consult with municipalities starting right as soon as the budget's passed and talk about putting the rules and regs around that will meet government's objectives while still being helpful and useful for municipalities. Some of the things you named, we don't fund directly through municipal affairs, they go through other ministries. On the other hand, a lot of municipalities use their, what used to be MSI and now LGFF funds for these types of things. And one of the great things about some of our programs is that they're, the municipalities have a wide range of discretion on, so it's, even though transportation, as we talked earlier, funds water and wastewater, we don't fund that directly. They can apply their LGFF funds or the MSI funds to their wastewater project, or to their water project, or to their local bridges and roads and such. So one of the nice things about we don't do the only funding within government, but our funding's, they don't have a complete blank slate on what they could spend the money on, but it's pretty flexible. They would very seldom would say no to a legitimate municipal thing. So that's one of the, we end up with our funding supporting some of those things, but that's a local decision. That's not our decision. Our funding is designed to give, and we don't want to be too prescriptive, because it can punish somebody, again, unintended consequence. So if you got two communities, that one has just invested a whole bunch of money to bring all their water and wastewater up to date, and the one next door is invested a bunch of money to bring all their parks and recreation facilities up to date, then if you do a park and recreation project only, then you punish the one that's got everything up to date. And if you do a water and wastewater program only, then you punish the one that's already spent, but you punish the ones that have behaved the best on that. So we find that by providing the flexibility and with the large number of municipalities, that gives everybody the best chance of making a positive impact for their residents using the flexible capital funding that we're able to provide through municipal affairs.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, to the minister. I'm going to come back to that a little bit. I appreciate the flexibility for the LGFF, and when I think of these heritage communities, they're certainly using that flexibility. I'm going to, speak my mayor's voices in my head. We used all our MSI funding for this emergency because I'm going to take, for example, their lagoons were leaking and there were so many problems and they were ready to, cave in. And so it had to be done. Well, there's no MSI funding for the next emergency, which was, crumbling streets or crumbling sidewalks. And so it's just not enough. And they must be one of your successful communities if you're hearing from them, right? If they're saying it's just not enough, they want more. But some of these heritage communities really do have very unique, massive needs. And so I guess that's where my question is coming from. And can the minister speak to some of these unique needs of these heritage communities?
Well, every community has unique needs, and we try to be flexible with that because we deal with them all in municipal affairs. And again, that's why our programs are flexible. A lot of it has to do with the current council and how they handle their financial wherewithal, as well as past councils, because each council inherits the financial condition from the council before. So, and to be clear, we try to be somewhat flexible too, because lots of municipalities are blessed with greater or lesser abilities to raise revenue to fix their infrastructure and deal with it. Some are fortunate, some might be in a place where there's a great deal of oil and gas development revenue, forestry. Some might just have a lot of business development, a lot of office, and a lot of taxes come from that. And some seem to have very sparse opportunities to raise tax revenue. So again, another reason why our programs are flexible, but in reality, every municipality legitimately has a different story than the one next to it, even though there's themes that are recurring. Everybody always wants something, and I gotta say, we've never said we'll solve all of everybody's problems. Listen, municipalities have to solve some of their own problems with our help, of course. We're always there to help, but each municipality has to have a council that is creative and has to talk to their residents too. And the Municipal Government Act that we administer, I think, provides them with also a great amount of flexibility and authority over what decisions they make and what priorities they set for their citizens, hopefully with their citizens, as we try to do by staying in touch with Albertans and with the municipalities. But one size will never fit all. And even though there's tremendous similarities between one municipality and another, and even 1 year and another, things aren't always the same either. So with all this uncertainty and all this variation, we do our best, and that's why communication is such a big thing for us. We're constantly talking to municipalities. I am, and I've got amazing staff that, as well as we monitor them. You will find if you look at our website, we have something called the Municipal MMI, the Municipal Measurement Index. And where you, as a community, compare yourself to other ones. As a citizen, you can compare how your municipality is doing towards other ones, and that's just one of the many ways that we try to keep tabs with an intent to help municipalities and to try to be an early warning system. If the indicators look like they are in trouble or could be getting in trouble, we don't wait. We try not to wait till it's too late. We try to send somebody out and say, look, our indicators say you might need help, and we're here to try to provide that. So why don't we talk about your financial situation, your infrastructure situation, whatever it happens to be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. That concludes the first portion of questions for the independent member. We will now move to 20 minutes for the government caucus members and the minister, who's starting, and Member Dick. Do you want to share time?
If the minister's willing, I would love to share time.
Would you like to share time?
You know, I don't always do it, but I was taught sharing is good. So let's try that.
Minister, thanks. Your parents were excellent.
Just right, we'll take our break after this 20-minute span here, 5-minute break. So go ahead, you got 20 minutes.
Chair. Yeah, thanks so very much. Thanks, Minister, for coming out this evening, and all the staff too as well. I know it's giving up an evening is it's not always the best, but thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the minister and doing excellent work. This is fantastic. I have some questions, mostly revolving around building codes. And a lot of my questions just come because we know that people are coming. We have an Alberta advantage. People are moving here in droves. Whether it's entrepreneurs or investors, they're coming here. And what I really want to talk about right now is there's an item in your mandate letter to work with municipalities to benchmark, measure, and reduce the time to approve permits to attract a more business investment environment. Now, I think this sounds like this is probably mostly true. I'm going to talk about my riding in Grand Prairie. We would love more opportunity to build more houses. So this is about the statement of operations on page 176. So we've kind of talked a little bit about the local growth and sustainability grant. So I'm curious if that $20 million would be in part to assist individual municipalities to work with Alberta's government to reduce the municipal red tape and get building and other permits out the door as faster or as quickly as possible.
Yes and no. This red tape matters. Okay, I'm not going to say, never going to say it doesn't, but that's this $20 million grant isn't specifically about that. This is for two reasons. One is to try to assist municipalities when they do what our government is asking them to do. We ask municipalities to join us in our efforts as a provincial government to bring in more businesses, provide more jobs, more investment, more opportunities, more of a bright future for Alberta. And when municipalities say yes, and either because we ask them to or just because they're good at their jobs do that, sometimes it puts pressure on the infrastructure that they may need to support that economic development. And we hope that this grant will make some meaningful contribution to that. The other reason for it is to municipalities just come up between a rock and a hard place sometimes where they have to fix something because it just has to be done and it doesn't fit into any of our funding envelopes or maybe not government's funding envelopes, and try to help them be sustainability. It just gives us, we hope, a tool that might help some of them out. And so again, I'll never say red tape doesn't matter because it does. But part of this is one of the things that we want to incent them to do at this point, on top of just bringing in business, is to provide housing. As I said, I was a little evasive with our other colleague across the way there, and I'll be equally evasive with you. The Minister Nixon is the lead on this, but our ministry certainly works with him on what we're trying to do to incent and support housing. Subsidized, attainable, and market housing. You'll see that legislation that I can't tell you any more that I could tell our friend across the way, because the legislation isn't out yet, but we expect to be bringing forward incentives for municipalities to say yes to things, to work with the building development industry, and we've got a lot of homes to build, we got a lot of people to do it, the government can't do it all, so we'll also be trying to coordinate and quarterback some meetings between all the affected parties, the parties that can move the ball down the field and advance the stock of housing for every income bracket, if you will, of Albertans that require that housing. And to be clear, all Albertans require housing. Some are just able to afford different levels, different expense levels of housing than others.
So just follow up, just to make sure I'm clear, Minister. Is there any money in the budget or in your ministry to help the applications for permits to be seamless as possible, to streamline that process at all for them? There seems to be some when I'm talking like where I'm from, Grand Prairie. I think we can turn a permit for like a new house in a couple days. So I think they're doing a good job. But I've heard this from a few builders now across Alberta that it's the permitting timeframe can be quite extensive. So is there any streamlining or any money in that specifically for that permitting process, streamlining it to be able to bring that about faster?
The short answer, I would say no.
Okay.
It may not be what you want to hear, but we are active working with them in trying to encourage them to find ways to get the applications approved faster. I think, and one of the things that we could try to compare municipalities to each other and brag about the ones with short approval times. There's lots of friendly rivalry and competition between municipalities, which is actually spurs innovation and incents people to do better and go faster and to be more effective at that kind of stuff. And frankly, we're happy to see there's lots of friendly rivalries around where municipalities, and I'd like to think we played a bit of a role in that in terms of facilitating the ability to compare notes, and now sometimes they don't need us anymore. And once they feel like they're good at it, they tell their neighbors how much better they are than them. and I think it's meant in a positive way, though, competitive. So we're part of that. We feel good about, I think, having started some of these, but I gotta say, municipalities, a lot of them are pretty darn forward-thinking and innovative on their own. One of the things that we try to do is risk-based inspections, so that builders and such that do a good job and they get everything right, 20 inspections out of 20 and never a problem. Sometimes they might make it so to save costs, they don't need to be inspected quite as often. And conversely, builders and developers, that if out of 20 inspections, something needs fixing 15 times, they'll get more inspections. And there's probably a zone where we figure got it about right, where people get it right at most of the time. They have the odd mistake, and it's good to have inspections to keep them on the right track. So these are things that we do that we think actually reduces job delays for constructors, and also increases the quality for people receiving the end result of that construction work. So we try to, in our budget, I guess, spend the money where it does the most good, where we incent and encourage good behavior, and where we try to correct and discourage bad behavior, and try to bring everybody up to a good level at the same time.
Awesome, thank you. So kind of along this vein too as well, I love technology. I love hearing about new things. I know technology in the building trades is constantly evolving. They're going fast. And the incorporation of technology can be, something different that's flame retardant, for instance, in buildings. So, but sometimes it can be pretty cumbersome to get through some of the red tape on the building codes. So, or in the incorporation of these technologies. So I shouldn't say building code specifically, but is the ministry working on the speed to to be able to speed up the process for builders to incorporate new forms of technology? So is that
Yeah, we do, but it's, again, there's so many things that we do that it's a two-edged sword. When the building codes are largely national, each province has the ability to vary from the national code, but most provinces, including Alberta, largely adhere to it. And that's good because one of the things, whether you're a resident buying a home in another province or a business buying another business building in another province, it's good to know that the building standards within Canada are somewhat similar, so you kind of know what you're getting. It kind of makes that all easier to happen. But, and let's face it, in the last 50 years, you could say 100, but let's say 50, the environmental standards for building have gotten way higher. The safety standards have gotten way higher. The quality standards have gotten higher. There's new technologies. There's new building materials. There's new way of processing the old building materials to make them better. So we encourage that, but we also have to be mindful of the fact that if you go from right to the top of the scale for safety and environmental quality, then you're dropping down on the affordability. And if you go right to the top of the scale where you want to be on affordability, so everybody can afford a house or a building, then maybe the houses won't be safe and they won't be very environmentally friendly. So these positive things that we want to encourage, all of it actually work against each other a little bit. So so we try to with the input from people that build homes and businesses and municipalities and the construction trade and everything, try to really balance all that off and take advice. I don't know, for example, I've heard from electricians here lately. I don't know what some of the stuff in the building code, it costs too much in their opinion. I was talking to an electrician, and we do equivalences through stand data when we do updates and stuff, with like bulletins, if you will, that comes out that keeps up date. But I've heard from a number of things on electricians later, and I'm not an electrician, but the one thing they tell me is there was the standard pipe, if you will, that comes out of the ground to the electrical box in your home was a certain diameter around, and now the new standard is bigger. And some electricians have said, well, unless you're using a really big electrical box, a really big service, then this bigger pipe doesn't do a darn thing for you, but adds $400 to the cost of the house. And if you do that 10 times, then of course there's $4,000 and on and on and on. So we try to be sensitive to these things, and we try to learn from the trades people and building people and such too while we do it. So it's an ongoing process, and we adjust as we can, but we do try to keep up to the national building codes because we want Alberta to be at the forefront of things. And that runs right up against affordability. So that's the balance that we try to, that we constantly, and while it's never perfect, we can do the best job we can by staying constantly in touch with municipalities, homeowners, builders, and everybody else involved in the process.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Minister. Really appreciate the conversation here. So I'm going to turn my time, cede the rest of my time over to Member Sinclair here. I think you might have a couple things to ask about too as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you to my colleague. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, and to your team for all the hard work. I'm grateful for the work, and specifically the difficult but incredibly important balance, I would say, between the budget predictability and fiscal responsibility, with the emphasis on tying the LGFF to the province's financial performance or revenue, but and through the chair to the minister, I apologize if this is overlap. I am but a simple man and new to politics, so if this sounds like a similar question we were talking earlier, I was just wondering if you could maybe we could go back to the MSI and the LGFF. I'm new to politics and government, so I didn't know, I said this before, I'd need a doctorate in acronyms to be able to remember all these, but specifically...
Too many TLAs, 3-letter acronyms.
Okay, sounds good. I'm aware the government's recently transitioned from the Municipal Sustainability Initiative to the Local Government Fiscal Framework. And under line item 5.1 of your government estimates, the budget 24-25 allocates 60 million for the LFF operating program, which replaces the Municipal Sustainability Initiative. I'm wondering if you could just explain a little bit more about the importance of the transition to me, and possibly a lot of the people in my riding who also don't have doctorates in acronym and maybe more layman's terms. And then also, if you don't mind, just letting me know if some of the municipalities have the transfers frozen at pre-2024 levels. Will the way the figures are calculated mean any municipality won't get as much as they did in the past?
Well, this year coming up, nobody will get less than they got
Okay.
this year. Nobody will get less next year. And from there, the year after that, because of the way the difference, you asked about some of the difference between the MSI and the LGFF. The MSI, government could adjust it up and down as we needed to, I suppose you could say as we wanted to, but and a lot of that was based on, it ended up being based to some degree on government revenues anyways, because we are still a government that's heavily dependent upon resource revenues. There's lots of opinions and thoughts on that. But the fact is, if you got somewhere between $2 and $20 billion coming in, you can't ignore that fact. If you're in government, okay, you just can't ignore it. So we try to use it as wisely as we can, so the MSI, it would go up and down from time to time based on a government decision. Municipality says that's way too unpredictable for us. They sometimes would end up in a position where if they had a construction project that lasted 2 years, it's the worst thing for them. It's a $20 million project for some size of municipality, they get into the second year and then their funding gets cut by a certain amount, and then they're $500,000 or $1 million short that they need to borrow, puts them in a very bad spot. The one thing that's part of the reason why the LGFF works is because municipalities help design it. They said, look, we get it. You got resource revenue, it goes up and down, it's unpredictable, and we get cut in the bad years. We can live with that as long as we get the love in the good years. We'll take the pain if we get the love. That's kind of what they're saying. So that's what the LGFF brings to the table, is that their revenue automatically goes up and down with the provincial revenue. And the other beautiful thing about it is, with the 3-year delay, is they know ahead of time. So if this budget gets approved, as we hope it will, they will already know what the year starting April 1st revenue will be for their municipality, and they'll also know next year. And soon they'll know the year after that. So they'll know, like, essentially 2 or more years ahead. So it really puts them in a position to not get caught short, to say we're gonna pave this section of road in our municipality that, we barely can afford to do, but we're gonna get her done, and then they won't get surprises that, whoops, you're gonna get in a million or $500,000 or $2 million, depending on the size of your municipality, less from the province. They should already know. They can make plans, they can try to sign contracts and do all of that. So that's and I gotta say, it really shows a high level of sophistication and maturity on the part of the municipalities, that they say, we get it. We'll take a haircut when the province takes a haircut, but by golly, we want to be rewarded by the market when the province gets rewarded too. So we think we've decided that's a fair trade-off, and so we think municipalities will enjoy this. And like I said, not because I'm smart, because I'm lucky. Next year it'll go up by 13-14%. Definitely not because I'm smart, but it's fortunate that as the minister introduced this program, it would have been a lot harder sell. Had to say, now you got this great program and it goes down by 10% next year. But I'm lucky, so but that gets us off to a good start. But over time, when you look at the average Alberta government annual revenues, it goes up a lot more often than it goes down. And we think over time municipalities will appreciate and benefit from that up and down pattern.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. Second question, we've also had, just moving to the ACP program, if that's okay. We're gonna be tight for time here, and it's a 2-part question. We've also had the Alberta Community Partnership Program as something that provides operating funding to municipalities If I refer you to page 114 in the ministry business plan, the estimate for this coming fiscal year is consistent with what has happened in the past and is forecast to carry through, to fiscal 26-27 at $15.4 million. So it is a two-part question. My first one is, my question is, why do you have two different programs providing operating funding to municipalities, the ACP and the LGFF? And it'll have to be a quick answer, I apologize. And the second one is the local growth and sustainability grant. I would have to admit, I don't know if I'm under oath or what the official word is, I stepped out to FaceTime my daughters for bedtime, so I heard you had $20 million, and I thought I heard you were giving it all to Lesser Slave Lake. So if you could clarify that on the record.
Well, you got good ears when you hear what didn't get said, so those, I don't have ears that good. But I will say, so, listen, the LGFF is the basic capital funding program for municipalities that we just talked about that goes up and down with provincial revenues. Time's short, so I'm trying to get a little more of your answer in. ACP is more of it's an annual competitive program that provides targeted funding to municipalities for regional initiatives. So municipalities want to work together on something, we'll help them study who would pay for how much of a rec center and what they need, or who would, whatever other thing they want to share. And it's application based, so nobody's guaranteed that funding, and we try to make the best use of it. And municipalities really appreciate it. The program administers funding under several components, each with its own provincially aligned initiatives. Excuse me. The multi-component design of ACP makes it a target tool for supporting provincial municipal priorities. And the local government fiscal framework operating component, which is part of it, is an allocation based and provides to all municipalities annually. It actually provides some flexible funding, not only on the operating side as well as the capital side, which municipalities tell us they really appreciate. So we work with them, and both programs are somewhat flexible, but on the ACP in particular, it's application based, and we have to approve it every time.
Thank you, Ms. Doug. That concludes our government members' first block of questions. We will take a 5-minute break and start back here at 9:01. speaking, rotation going forward will be the same as the first round, starting with the official opposition, followed by the independent members, and then the government caucus. However, the speaking times are now reduced to 5 minutes in duration, which if they're combined, that'll be a 10-minute shared time. And no one can speak more than 5 minutes, and you're unable to cede. And 5 minutes in one stretch. Yeah, I've done that a few times. So we'll do that. So we'll start with the opposition members, and you got 10 minutes back and forth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and just want to confirm that the minister is okay with share time?
We're still sharing, sir.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to actually ask the minister on two items. One is the infrastructure deficit, and specifically referencing outcome number 1 on page 111 of the government plan. It also relates to page 173 of the estimates document. As the minister is aware, the city of Edmonton is among one of the fastest growing cities in North America, and as such, many municipalities across Alberta, like Edmonton, is facing growth pressures. As previously mentioned by the minister, the MSI, the Municipal Sustainability Initiatives, have now been phased out and replaced by LGFF, along with the Local Growth and Sustainability Grant. But I must point out that the Alberta municipalities, which represents elected and administrative leaders across the province, paint a slightly different picture. They are saying that there is, through their budget analysis, that there's a $30 billion infrastructure deficit that will worsen, and that even though the province has now achieved predictability, sustainability, and the sort of the adequate funding is still to be desired. And compared to 2011, provincial infrastructure funding to municipal governments has dropped by 64% on a per capita basis. That's $424 per capita in 2011 to $154 per capita today. And if provincial funding for municipal infrastructure has kept pace with Alberta's population growth and inflation, the funding should be $1.75 billion. So my question to the minister is, does he agree with this assessment? And moreover, does the province have a plan to address the growing infrastructure deficit that our municipalities face?
Well, let me say this. If the municipalities say they need $30 billion, my going in position is that I'm sure that they know what they're talking about, so I'm not going to argue with them on that. But the other hand, it's not always quite as simple as that. We went through a period of time where previous government racked up debt that took us up to $70-80 billion, almost to 100, to the point where, I don't know, where the annual interest costs are several $billion. Government went through a process where we had to get a grip on expenditures and the way things were done, and everybody felt some pain there, including municipalities. I think we have things more under control now, and I hope to be in a period where it's, again, when the LGFF is part of that, where there's predictable funding. I don't know what our future government funding will be, but as we talked about, I think, quite a bit here this evening, it'll go up and down. The municipalities will go up and down with ours, and honestly, we all have to make very difficult, very responsible decisions. I can never relieve municipalities of that. Certainly, we'll never get to relieve ourselves of that at the province. I believe the day will never come when all of us have all the money we need. So we're always going to have to make difficult value judgments, difficult decisions, and try to do it all in the best interests of Albertans. Because the one thing that we have completely in common with Alberta municipalities is we have exactly the same bosses. the people that elect the, I don't know, couple thousand municipally elected people in Alberta exactly, or almost exactly, if they're not the same set of human beings that elect the 87 MLAs. So when we have the same bosses, we need to keep looking for ways to align our interests. And those interests include controlling our expenditures and trying to spend enough on the capital and the services that Albertans desperately need, want, and deserve. So there's nothing that I believe you or anybody can do to take that tension, that pressure away, but on an ongoing basis, we need to constantly talk about it and do the best we can together. That may not be exactly what you want to hear, but I don't think it gets simple. I don't think you can just say we'll spend our brains out and it'll be fine, or you can't just say we won't spend anything till we're out. That won't work either. So we need to live in reality and deal with things as they occur.
Thank you very much, Minister, for the answer. I certainly recognize that there may not be 100% alignment, but I do want to sort of get into the number a little bit here that Alberta municipalities, through their own budget analysis, is saying that they need $1.75 billion if you factor in population growth and inflation, and we all would agree that those are certainly very much challenges that we all face in the province. Compared to what is provided of the 724 million. So there's quite a large discrepancy there, and I'm just wondering if the ministry has considered that in your dialogue with municipalities and
Nope.
try to arrive at a number that is more aligned.
Well, let me just say that $1.75 billion that you reference isn't what we're talking about here tonight, because we're talking about our budget as presented. Having said that, I will say to you that I think what the capital plan or overall that our government has, most of it not within municipal affairs, is about $25 billion. And pretty much everything that happens in Alberta happens in a municipality. So that's $25 billion that will essentially get spent on capital within municipalities. It's possible that they won't always agree on the choices we make to do on that. I would say at this point, we don't think that an extra $1 billion a year would not be sustainable. Listen, I have great sympathy for the needs that municipalities had. I was one of those people that was elected that way for 9 years, and it was tough then and it's tough now. But one of the biggest threats to ongoing support for the things that people need in municipalities, housing, education, schools, roads, sidewalk, all that stuff, is the royal we's ability to pay. So that's why it's a matter of also keeping your fiscal house in order while you're doing that, and trying to set aside enough on a regular basis to look after these things. And if there's an easy answer, I haven't heard it yet. So we'll keep trying to sort through the hard answers.
Thank you, Minister, and I would certainly say that I've heard from municipalities that many of those costs are being downloaded to the local taxpayer through property tax in some cases. I'm going to move on to the grants in place of taxes program, and of course, as you're aware, Minister, the provincial government doesn't pay property taxes per se. The GPOT is supposed to provide sort of in lieu what property taxes would have been. It was cut in 2019 by 25%. And was cut additionally, and that funding has not been restored, because for a city like Edmonton, where 60% of the provincial buildings are in the city, there is a deficit or accumulated deficit of maybe $60 million that, maybe not deficit, but back property taxes, let's say, for the lack of a better term, since 2019. Does the provincial government have any plans to restore the payment in which they have paid in full for decades prior to 2019?
I would say there's no plan in this year's budget, which is what we're discussing tonight, and you are right. The first NDP cut that by 25%, and then the, government, after the NDP cut it by another 25%, which takes it to 50% of the GPOT. But, it's, when municipalities complain about this, I'm not without sympathy. I mean, they have expenses to pay too. So we'll keep listening to them, but the short answer, there's no intention in this year's budget to restore that this year. But we will continue to listen to municipalities, but it's also important to notice that if you were to ask municipalities, do you want government buildings there, even with the current level of GPOT payments? I think most of them would say yes. I think there's a lot of municipalities that would love to have the legislature there.
Thank you, Minister. We will move on to the independent member now, and you have 10 minutes of shared time if that's what you still want.
Right, thank you, Minister, and to the Chair, or sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair, to the Minister. In Government Estimates, page 171, 6.2, small communities fund assists communities with populations under 100,000 to complete infrastructure projects. On page 173, 6.2, the 2023-24 budget reflects 1,291,000, and there's nothing in the budget for 24-25. Can the Minister just explain these budget numbers?
Well, the Small Communities Fund, that's the federal funding program? Okay, that's it. Okay, so that one was launched in 2015. 56 projects were approved under the program, primarily water and wastewater projects. So just as a bit of a clarification, I think I said that we don't fund water and waste, and that is true. That is a fact. But this is a flow through from the federal government, where on their behalf, we're flowing that money through on the federal government. So I just wanted to make sure that members didn't think I was being disingenuous with my previous answers. I was straight up honest, but this is a different case. The federal government said, we got this money for municipalities for water, will you hand it out to them? I mean, with a little more rigor than just handing it out, but we said yes, of course, because we support our municipalities. So, that was 56 projects. The program budget is fully committed now. It's no longer open to new applications. Due to some construction delays, some timelines for project completions have been extended to 27, 28. And that's just a matter of making sure municipalities get that money and they get their projects completed. No new funding that we know of is coming forth now from the federal government. We're certainly open to it. And to whatever extent they flow money through us to the municipalities, we'll always do our best to get it out the doors and get it out the doors in a responsible way and try to do it in meeting whatever conditions are put on by the federal government. And we'll constantly continue advocating to the federal government that their programs be about as flexible as ours are, so the municipalities don't get caught in the middle of needing some work done and not being able to get the federal funding because the conditions are too stringent. It's too strident for it to be useful for them. But we do appreciate the help when we do get it from our friends in Ottawa, and we do our best to deliver.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the Minister. And I love that he mentioned the flow through for the water project. If we could go to page 111 of the Municipal Business Plan, 1.5. And it is about oil and gas unpaid taxes. And I understand the Minister had to deal with this a little bit at the RMA this past week. This is a real issue for a lot of our municipalities, some more wealthy than others, some able to absorb the lack of unpaid taxes, some not so much. And it seems that a lot of these unpaid taxes are coming from foreign oil and gas companies, from what I understand. And maybe the Minister can clarify this and how we are going to ensure that our municipalities are getting their taxes from these unpaid oil and gas companies.
Yeah, again, nothing's ever simple. I've been working together with RMA and their president, Paul, for a number of years on this stuff, and both of my tours as Municipal Affairs Minister. My first tour, we put Bill 7 in place, which gave the municipalities a bit of a hammer where they could sue oil and gas companies in a way that they couldn't do before to try to recover that. And no sooner did we do that than they found other ways to get around this. Worked with President Paul and RMA and I worked with our energy minister and got the AER to put in place Directive 67, which restricts the ability of oil and gas companies to buy or trade wells or when they're behind in their taxes, and yet still they are, and you're not wrong in saying, listen, the vast majority of oil and gas companies are excellent corporate citizens. They pay their bills without being prompted to, without complaint, without delay. And yet there are some, and you're right, they're almost exclusively foreign owned, maybe not 100%, but mostly. And they don't seem to care about doing what's right. And every time we cut off one loophole, they seem to find another way to misbehave and not pay their bills. I don't know what the answer is. I've committed 2 days in a row in front of all the members of RMA to work with President Paul, and he committed to working with me. I don't know what the answer is. He did hold the pom-poms up today in front of, that's not an expression, he held the pom-poms up in front of 400 people and said, repeat after me, everybody, AER. So whether AER is the answer, I guess we'll work with him and with our energy minister to see whether it is. But whether that's the answer or whether it's not, we will be there to work with them to try to solve it. It's a real problem. We really have found a couple ways to help, and we haven't done enough yet. We'll know we've done enough when it's not a problem anymore, but it's still a problem, and it's still a big problem, so we know we got more to do. And if somebody has a perfect answer, I'd sure like to hear it. Maybe it's out there, but I'll continue to work with the RMA, continue to work with our energy minister, and try to put this real big problem to rest. But to be clear, I put great efforts into it in cooperation with all those people. We haven't succeeded yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to the minister for the great work on that and for mentioning the wonderful Reeve Paul McLaughlin from the wonderful constituency of Lacombe Panoka. Thank you. Maybe my last question here is from page 172 of government estimates, operating expense number 7. And I know the minister mentioned this in his opening talk about grants in place of taxes. And like my colleague to my left, I'm a little new at this, and if the minister could explain exactly what that means, that would be wonderful. And this budget line is 36 million. Can the minister explain what grants in place of taxes is and how it is being used?
Well, I'll be as, under the law in Canada, one order of government cannot tax another order of government, full stop. So provinces can't tax the feds, feds can't tax the province, and can't tax cities, and cities can't, and towns can't tax us. However, it's customary, when somebody has a building in a municipality, that they pay property taxes to the municipality, and as government, we don't have to. So it's definitely not a tax, because they don't have the authority to tax us, so it's a grant in place of that tax. And some of the opposition members with their questions are correct in their assertion that up until a few years ago, our government paid 100% of the would-be property tax if that was allowed to be charged in the form of a grant in place of tax. And during the NDP's time, they reduced 100% to 75%. And during the UCP's time, we reduced it from 75 to 50. And I guess no one should be surprised that municipalities are complaining about that. So it's a real thing. They ask us on a regular basis, and there's nothing in this year's budget to adjust or change that. But we hear from municipalities, we listen to them, we'll keep listening to them, and I don't know what will happen in the future, but I just have to say straight up, because if this evening is about giving information about this year's budget, and the cold hard truth is in this year's budget, there is no intent or plan to change that percentage from 50.
Okay. I am going to be done with that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the minister and to your staff.
Thank you very much.
Much. We will go to the government caucus now, and MLA Hunter, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, and your team for the work you guys do. Minister, I see that the mission statement of municipal affairs has the Alberta Community Partnership, or ACP, program as described as a competitive application-based grant program and that the criteria are posted publicly. And all eligible entities can apply, and as has been mentioned, that the budget for this line item is $15.4 million. So how are the component budgets determined for the Alberta Community Partnership grants?
Well, it's application-based. So we, when there's conditions around, I guess the things that municipalities can apply for, and they do. There's, like I say, in the neighborhood of 330 municipalities. Some of the intent of the ACP is to encourage cooperation between neighboring municipalities. And sometimes it's to help do research for an emerging issue, emerging problem, emerging opportunity. Not everything that's emerging is negative. Sometimes it's positive too. So by competitive, it means they have to apply for it, but it's not a zero-sum game competitive where community A gets a certain amount of the ACP, community B will get less. It's more as a funding envelope that will deal with the inevitable issues that crop up when you got 300 plus municipalities. Stuff happens. Stuff crops up. Issues occur. Intermunicipal stuff happens. So it's used to, the streams are intermunicipal collaboration, excuse me, municipal restructuring, municipal internship, which is actually, it's good for us in municipalities because getting interns in there, we always need skilled people that know about municipalities. So by supporting interns, it helps provide the labor pool to some of the smaller in particular, but other big municipalities too, to some of their need to get well-trained people in there. Mediation and cooperative processes, there's a lot of interjurisdictional disputes that we try to mediate and bring peace on the mountain, whatever that mountain is. And the strategic initiatives, and again, some of those are positive. So if we work together with this other municipality, we can achieve some end. Municipal collaboration was 5.6 million. The municipal restructuring, 6 million. Municipal internship, 1 million. Mediation, 0.6 of a million. And strategic initiatives, 2.2 million. And let me say this, one of the ones that's probably growing or will grow is municipal restructuring. And again, that's why I always say about 330 municipalities, though that might be the exact number, because there's several municipalities that are actually today at this hour in some process that could end up with them being dissolved or amalgamating with another community or two communities becoming one. Some of those things, and that's this program helps us to deal with those issues because, in fact, across Alberta, one of the things that happens actively, and we heard about this at RMA in particular, is that there's a lot of rural municipalities that might contain 2, 10, 20 or more small urban municipalities, and in many cases, the rural municipality gives them money every year to keep them alive. And they do it willingly and knowingly and in the spirit of cooperation and neighborliness, but also in I think in the spirit of practicality, knowing that if they don't keep the municipality alive, then they dissolve and they become part of the rural municipality. Then the rural municipality has to organize and pay for everything that the small urban is doing, and sometimes it's better to help than to take it over. So, but nonetheless, different municipalities have different realities. Some are growing and thriving, and other ones not so much. For a variety of reasons. So there's a lot of that happens. It's we have great staff that are skilled at determining the value of the ACP opportunities, and boy, oh boy, there's lots of cases where somebody might be in a lot more trouble, or where it's really, we can really help municipalities to get along where they might be feuding for years on end. So we try to make the best use of it that we can, and I think it's well respected amongst municipalities. Even if lots of them apply for grants, they don't all get them. But I think there might be not be unanimous agreement, but I think there's widespread agreement that it's a good program and it's genuinely helpful. And I think they're okay with the competitive part of the process because they seem to know how to communicate their needs and why they would apply under these different categories for the grant. And by golly, every year there seems to be lots of use, genuine use for it. So I don't know what we'd do without it. I really don't.
Well, I can tell you, Minister, just kind of commenting on the honorable member earlier speaking about Lethbridge and the corridor between Lethbridge and Medicine Hat. I think there's 10 communities on there that actually applied through Coaldale on the water and wastewater on, wastewater on Coaldale and water in Tabor. And they received the grants for those, and that's going to help to be able to understand what the needs are going to be for that corridor. So I do believe that that is a good program. I hope that that continues on.
In this year's budget, it will.
Good. On page 112 of the Municipal Affairs Business Plan, if you look at under the key objectives 2.1, growth cooperation and growth management boards, including monitoring the effectiveness of the Calgary and Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Boards and reviewing the legislative provisions related to intermunicipal collaboration frameworks. Minister, the money that is earmarked for the growth management boards in Calgary and Edmonton, have they been reduced?
Flat. Yes, yeah, I think it's been $1 million a year for a couple or 3 years at least. Yes, I'm looking for correction if I didn't get that right.
Yes, Minister, it is consistent with what it has been the previous 2 years. It was gradually reduced. It was previously at a higher level when the boards were first established and getting their feet under them, but it has been consistent for the last 3 years.
And I guess the reduction, why was the reduction happening?
I think the intent at one point was for it to go to zero, for the boards to be self-funding and for it to get to zero. Am I wrong in saying that? Yeah, but at this point, we do intend to maintain the $1 million level. It seems that the goal of self-sustainability of these things might be harder to achieve than we hoped, but we still think they have value, so we fund them to that level and try to work with them and stay on top of them and encourage them to make good decisions that support the growth, environmental responsibility and economic development that Alberta so desperately needs, and cooperation between the municipalities. I can assure you that not everything is a bed of roses every day. I suppose if all of us in this room were together to decide a bunch of stuff, we would find things to agree on and things to argue over, and by golly, they find things to agree on and things to argue over. And we hope that they sort them out and make good decisions together for the benefit of all Albertans.
Thank you, Minister. Alberta's government is in the midst of a laudable goal to increase the number of housing starts across the province. The projected figures mentioned has been 35,000. I draw your attention to the Municipal Affairs Business Plan document on page 110, and it states, in order to help ensure Albertans are safe in their homes and communities, Municipal Affairs oversees the province's safety code system established by the Safety Code Act. And a little further down, quotes, in addition to overseeing the safety codes, Municipal Affairs, under the New Home Warranty Buyer Protection Act, administers new home buyer protection policies and programs. Given that this government has committed to implementing solutions as a result of the new home buyer protections review, what solutions have been implemented so far that will increase consumer protections?
Okay, I might ask some of my staff here to do that, but I think we made some good progress. I know we had the home warranty people in a while ago. Our staff have orchestrated some meetings between builders, homeowner buyers groups. Who would be the right person? I know some, but I know that I got a staff member here that knows more about it than I do. Where we're at with the progress.
And there's only a little bit of time, otherwise I would defer to my colleague Sean. But I will say that we're still in the middle of the review, but we have been making progress on implementing solutions that we've already heard through the consultation. And so a lot of what we've heard is that folks have had challenges kind of navigating the system, and that we needed to do more around sort of education and awareness.
much. We will go to official opposition. Who is going to go? MLA Sweet, go ahead. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Minister, you're okay to go back and forth still?
Let's share.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Minister. I want to follow up on one of the members' comments around the unpaid taxes or the oil and gas revenue that our rural municipalities have been asking the government to take action on. In 2020, the government of the time decided to create a tax holiday because the commodity price had decreased significantly for the oil and gas industry. The commitment on that 2020 tax holiday was that that was going to only last for 3 years. My understanding, Minister, and you can please clarify this for me, is that in December you announced that that tax holiday was going to continue and that on average, taxes owed to municipalities would be about $25,000 per well that municipalities would be losing. So this is for the pipeline and new drilling projects. That's the tax holiday. And that RMA has requested that that tax holiday end because it is significantly impacting their revenue base. So I'm just wondering if you can update us and let us know why the decision was made and what you're doing to support rural municipalities that are looking for that tax.
Okay, I'm not sure I agree with everything you said, but I agree you attempted to be honest with that, and let me clarify, okay, I'm not saying you were less than honest, I'm just saying we might need to clarify it a little bit. My staff will correct me on this. There's 3 elements of that, when we did that with the tax holiday. There's the well drilling equipment tax that my notes say that we said right from the get that was going away and not coming back. It's gone away, and as far as I know, it's not coming back. The second element was the property taxes on the new wells and pipelines, and that was a 3-year holiday. So that I think you characterized that perfectly accurately, that 3-year date comes up December 31st, 2024. And as far as I know, that's when that holiday will end, not a day before, not a day after. If somebody makes a decision differently, then I believe that'll be one that hasn't been made yet. I believe the intent is to do exactly what we said we'd do for 3 years, and that ends the end of this year. Now, the third element is a little more complex because that is related to the assessment. Help me with the phrase. Modify. I don't know why I lost the words here. Help me out.
It's assessment of mature oil and gas assets, particularly shallow gas.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I just couldn't pull the words out. So that we're doing that review of the assessment model review with municipalities and with industry, and the form and or time of that will come out of that assessment model review with industry and municipalities and how that goes. And what we're trying to do is, and I always, when I'm in front of municipalities, I always say I must have done something bad in a previous life because this has been hanging out there for 20 or 25 years. Probably should have been addressed that long ago, and it hasn't been. And I suppose by any government, I suppose it hasn't been because it's difficult. It's just another one of those things where there's not a real easy, straightforward answer to apply the right level of taxation and the right form of taxation on some of the linear assessment and other things that we deal with. And of course, when you do that, somebody is bound to end up getting more, and somebody's bound to end up less, and somebody will be mad at me. So there's my life. But we are committed to trying to be as transparent as we can and working straight with municipalities, working straight with industry, and working with our highly skilled assessment staff to put a set of principles that make sense to people that could be applied to these things, and amongst other variables, whether the price is high or the price is low, but actually come up with a formula that makes sense now and hopefully for some time into the future, since no one likes to touch this. And we're busy doing that. We're committed to doing it. We're committed to being transparent and working with everybody. And I still expect to get hell every day or at a regular basis about it. But that's what we're into right now. And I hope that I've tried to answer the question. I hope that gives you a flavor of where we're at with it.
No, and I appreciate that, Minister. I think it,
Let me reiterate, I never accused you of not being on.
Oh, it's
I just
fine.
tried to give some clarification here, okay?
I just realized we're probably the oldest electeds in the room right now, with, including one of our other members, so it's okay. We've been around a long enough time. I do want to just highlight, and then I'll move on to a different topic, and I appreciate your clarity, is that yesterday RMA did pass a resolution asking that there be interim funding for the loss of the oil and gas revenue, and 91.4% of the membership voted in favor. So, and I appreciate what you're saying, but I think as we look at the shifts with the funding model and the fact that the decision was made on behalf of municipalities to remove the taxation opportunities, it would be nice to look at the resolution and consider their request. Now, I would like to move on to something a little bit different. Obviously, as you know, being the critic for other files, been speaking a lot about wildfire and drought. And I wanted to speak a little bit about Policy Engagement 2.2, which is on page 170, which is about policy coordination and development, legislation, regulation. I'm just wondering, I've been hearing from municipal partners around trying to ensure that all municipalities are using the same communication when it comes to the drought response. And how are we developing educational tools and ensuring that municipalities are consistent across the province if the Minister of Environment has to look at encouraging municipalities to change some water allocation requirements or things like that. I'm just wondering what your ministry's role is in working with municipalities on that communication strategy and education strategy around water allocation for citizens.
Well, we're encouraging them to work with the environment minister and work with each other. And it's clearly municipal affairs is involved because our members are some of the biggest water users, not the only ones. I think Minister Schultz has really done a wonderful job of trying to get ahead of it. The big problem, listen, we could get super lucky, but luck is not a plan. All right, if it snows like crazy and then rains like crazy, maybe there won't be a problem. But most people don't believe it. I don't believe it. So in the absence of that, we were actually trying to put an actual plan for the worst while we hope for the best. And I think Minister Schultz is getting ahead of that. The water licenses are, I'm not sure if sacred is the right word, but they're highly valued and everybody holds on to them tight and really doesn't want to give an inch, right? It's whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. When it comes to this, that is a true sentiment. So Minister Schultz has summoned, I don't know if that's the right word, but let's just say encouraged those who hold water licenses to think about how much they can share. And then she's encouraged them to actually share it. So you can only, I think you actually can imagine just how difficult that will be. And yet, we're trying to do it because it's the right thing to do, and it's surely the right time to do it. So I don't know how that's gonna turn out, but I can say there's a high level after just coming through a week of rural municipalities and a week before of urban municipalities, a high level of awareness, severely high level of awareness. I think you'd really have to, I won't say be under a rock, because that's not fair, but almost everybody knows about it. I don't know how anybody couldn't, but I suppose it's possible if they just come off a real long holiday. But people know about it, they're talking about it. I hope they're gonna be working together. Our government, through Minister Schultz's ministry, I think is trying to do that. Municipalities are certainly engaged. And we are encouraging them to work together and be reasonable. If you can share something, share it. And if you need to take something, don't take more than you need. As an individual that lives in Alberta's largest city, I was actually happy when my council announced yesterday there's water restrictions in Calgary already. I'll be perfectly happy if I have to have a brown lawn all summer, if the cattle gets fed and the crops get watered and the Alberta municipality, the people all have water to drink. I'll be perfectly happy with a brown lawn.
Okay, Minister, I'm going to interrupt you real quick because I only have 30 seconds left.
Okay, sorry.
Real quick, surface rights, I see there's an increase for the Land and Property Rights Tribunal. Is that because you're anticipating that landowners are going to be upset with new legislation that may be telling them what they can do with their surface rights? And second one, firefighters are also looking for an advisory panel for multi-ministry groups Understand firefighters is under your purview, and I'm just curious if you have entertained looking at that advisory group for multi-ministry cooperation.
Well, we'll certainly consider it. We've actually put in place a deputy fire commissioner who's actually a former firefighter, and so it puts us on a better footing talking to the fire chiefs and the firefighters. If we got somebody that speaks their language, who's been up the ladders and in the smoky building, so we're working hard at that.
Thank you very much, Minister. Do the independent have more questions? No, you're done. Okay, so we'll be able to come back to you to expand on those questions. We'll go over to the government caucus, and it's MLA, Member McDougall is got 10 minutes.
I'll start off, first of all, if you wanted to elaborate and let her, finish the answer to her, I'll allow you to do that, otherwise I'll continue with my questions.
Sorry? Okay. Yeah, so, the Land and Property Rights Tribunal, there's a $134,000 increase in salaries and wages to address public sector compensation and other inflationary pressures. Is 63, it's offset by $63,000 decrease in salaries and wages in one FTE due to internal reallocation from Element 10, Land and Property Rights Tribunal, to 2.2, Municipal Policy and Engagement. So it's more or less steady, but we're trying to adjust a little bit within, make sure we have the right sized panels and the skill sets needed, and we're just in the midst of looking, trying to appoint new people to the LPRT to make sure we're staffed up and can meet the needs. Surface, met with a group of surface rights holders last week before, and I think some of the issues through the LPRT they were complaining about, and I'm okay to hear that, but I think that 83% of the decisions were in the land surface rights favor. I can't comment on individual files because I lose my job if I do that. Okay, because we get to set policy for the LPRT, but I don't get to put my fingers on individual files. And for the firefighters, we're working real hard with them. I think somewhere a couple of years ago, we let some of our communication and some of our cooperation with them slip. They let us know that, and in the way that only firefighters can, which is wasn't very subtle, and I'm okay with that, because I like clear communication, and based on that clear communication, we've gone a long ways to correcting how we communicate and work with them, because they're super important people to all Albertans and certainly to our government, and we're working very hard within my ministry to make sure that we're on top of the communications and being as cooperative with them as we can.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to a bit of issue on the community rank. So as a father who used to have to go to 5:30 in the morning to hockey rinks, bringing my little one along to drink bad coffee and watch him play early in the morning, or myself show up for a hockey game at 11 o'clock at night with a bunch of other old timers. The reality that hockey rinks are in short supply in this province, as I'm sure it is with Calgary, and as somebody that previously had been involved in running a community association with a couple rinks, it is kind of well known that within Canada, actually, but certainly in Alberta, where a lot of these facilities were built in the 70s, 60s and 70s, and are now going to the end of their useful life. I guess the question I have is there any other funding that you do within your budget that will be helping assist renovate or build other new type of facilities like this in the province? Is that what comes from the federal government program that you administer? Because I know that the province has been involved in the past in funding some of these type of projects.
I would say to you that generally speaking, we don't intentionally fund these things on purpose. I would say to you, within the very flexible capital funding programs that we have, the LGFF, formerly the MSI, lots of municipalities would choose at their decision to apply that funding to a rec center or a arena. That I think is true in this budget that we're actually talking about here. If you're talking about in the past, during COVID, there was an additional $500 million that went out to municipalities one time only, when the economy was really bottoming out during COVID, to try to stimulate the economy and get some things built, and some municipalities might have got a grant or two that they might have applied to an arena or something, but that's not. It's not that arenas are bad, but that's not our intention through municipal affairs to do that. We provide flexible capital funding, and very often municipalities may choose to apply that very flexible capital funding to arenas or rec centers.
Right.
Did I miss anything there?
A big part of your budget is administering federal grant programs. I guess I would like to understand a little bit better what exactly is incorporated in things like the Canada Community Building Fund.
Canada Community Building Fund started off as the feds used to call it the gas tax fund, and it was based on so many cents per liter on the gas used in Alberta that went to municipalities for capital funding. So pretty flexible. Not a lot of rules around it, some, but not a lot. And that is still going on now, but the federal government, we need to sign very soon a new funding agreement with the federal government on that. And we might be having some, we're of the belief they want to put some stringent rules around it instead of it being flexible. And we might have to have a serious conversation with them about what that looks like. We're obviously more in favor of municipalities having the flexibility to do what they need. I guess the more flexible it is, the more useful it is to municipalities. We will advocate on their behalf to maintain all the flexibility that we can, and that story hasn't been really written yet. $2.8 billion has been allocated to Alberta under the current 10-year agreement that expires in about a week from now, the end of March 2024. So we are, summer villages receive a base allocation of $5,000 per year plus the capital amount. Formula has been in place since the beginning of the formula, but the federal government seems to want to change the formula. So I think we're in for some important negotiations with them about what that looks like going forward. But we're on team flexibility. The federal government seems to want to put some stringent rules around it. We're gonna have to have a serious discussion with them on behalf of municipalities to make sure the program's as useful and helpful as it can be. So it's, I would say it's legitimate to say it's a little bit up in the air right now, but it's a live file within my ministry and other ministries in government, because I mean, the premier is the intergovernmental relations minister, so she'll likely be involved in this. I will likely be involved. There will be other ministries too, because some of that funding with the flexibility, it could have been used through municipalities on things that touch other ministries. So we're gonna try to make sure that if the program continues at all, that it continues as usefully and flexibly as it can be, but that story hasn't been written yet.
Okay. I'm not sure if you mentioned earlier, but the, investing in Canada infrastructure, community culture and recreation line item, 6.5, page 173, was discontinued this year, or funding ran out from the federal government. What's transpired with that?
With the ISIP? That was the ISIP, yes?
And as I said,
Go ahead,
closed.
please.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, there's actually two line items in the budget related to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, because we support projects in two different funding streams of that program. So the Community Culture and Recreation stream actually only had one project supported in it, and it is now completed.
Can I ask what it was? I know it's passed, but.
I will look that up.
Okay, sorry. And so the community building fund, what kinds of things have been funded from that, then, if I may ask?
Around the bend, really, hasn't it? Like, isn't it a pretty wide variety of things that, pretty flexible, right?
Same as MSI.
Pretty much the same as MSI. and now LGFF, very wide breadth of flexibility for municipalities. They're largely in almost complete control of it. There are some rules around it, but flexible enough that very flexible. And that's probably if there's a bone of contention or a discussion point that we need to have with the federal government is keeping as much of that flexibility as we can on behalf of municipalities, and that's a live file right now. The renewed agreement hasn't been signed. This one runs out the end of March this year. So when I say it's live, it's really live, and we don't know how it's gonna turn out yet.
Okay. Well, with 18 seconds left, I think I'll leave that and now go on to the next.
Should we go back over the opposition?
The one project, GH Daw Community Center expansion with the city of Red Deer.
Thank you.
We got that answer.
We'll go with the member Kayende to finish things up here for us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I was very encouraged to hear you talking about the importance of housing and how much time and effort you're going to spend in this next coming year on addressing the housing crisis. I think it's fair to say that so many of, certainly in my constituency, we're seeing people with rents go up by 50%, for example. I'm looking at the forecasts of home construction as well as population growth that are in page 24 of the budget, and of course for the second year in a row it looks like we're not going to be able to build sufficient housing stock to handle population growth. The scale is immense. Instead of building 35,000 houses, it seems as though we need to build 60,000 just in order to manage that. Requires a very different approach, I guess, and everyone in Alberta lives in a home, hopefully, but everyone also lives in a municipality. And so have you thought about, like additional granting, for example, or tying municipal funding to housing outcomes? Because the scale of the problem is immense. Like we must double, and every year that we're not doubling, we're actually building a backlog that just makes the whole thing worse.
We've thought about everything, and I don't mean that to be a flippant answer.
Sure, yeah. No, we need everything.
We've probably thought about it, tried to think about every bad idea and every good idea, just to make sure we thought of everything. I'm sure we still haven't thought of everything. You're gonna see some legislation come out, probably led by Minister Nixon here soon, and again, I'm really not trying to be cute, but I genuinely can't tell you what I think's in the legislation, because then somebody will make a point of privilege against me and I'll be in trouble. So, anyway, so that's coming. We think this is important. We're gonna try to encourage municipalities. We're gonna try to work with them. We're gonna try to bring them and the industry together. We'll put some money into it. Pretty sure of all of that. And my apologies, the legislation's not on the table, so I can't really get into the granular points with you. But yeah, we've tried to consider everything, and we know it's serious. I don't doubt what you say. We got what's pretty much record levels of housing construction going on in parts of Alberta right now, which is, well, you can feel good about it. I think you reasonably point out that if that's still not enough, then you can't feel too good about it. Okay, so we're gonna try to be more creative about what we do in the future, even to see if we can find some additional answers. We won't have all the other answers. Every fiber of me believes that when we get ourselves and industry and municipalities in the same room, ideas will come out that we don't have yet, and probably good ones.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, my constituents, it is like the number 2 thing that they are talking to me about, for sure. And it comes from all sides, right? And this is a challenge, just because I have business owners who are like, we're losing our people. They're leaving for more affordable locales.
Well, and yet there's more coming than going. And I'm not going to criticize today, at least the federal government, for the fact they're immigrating a lot more people. I mean, Canada was built on immigration, and yet you need a bit of a plan. I mean, we need people in Alberta because we got jobs for them, but we also need someone to build the houses for them. So amongst our immigration goals has got to be immigrating people that can swing a hammer and do plumbing and electrical and all the other house building things, and while we're doing that, we gotta, immigrate a whole bunch of teachers and nurses and doctors and other medical professionals, so it's,
And we've got Alberta's Calling Campaign, which, I mean, congratulations, has been very successful, but there's nowhere for people to live.
well, no, yeah, and I think as a government, we've tried to target it more, acutely to, building trades and doctors, nurses, and teachers, because that's what we need first.
And so, like, I guess my segue to that is with the LGIF funding model where basically it's lagging population growth by 2 or like, is it 2 or 3 years? Anyway, it's lagging. And so we've got, you know, in 22, we had population growth of 132,000. In 23, the full year is looking something like 160. Probably be the same this year according to the projections on page 24. So like, what does that do to the cities, I guess, when they're lagging, when in fact the funding model should probably be leading a little bit?
Well, I'm not an economist, but I'm not sure you can, I'm sure there's some correlation, but I'm not sure you can make a complete, direct, straight line comparison between population growth and the government's revenue. Trans Mountain Pipeline should come on stream this year. It should be a somewhat substantial bump in Alberta's revenue without a big population growth. So in that case, we might be leading it. I'm not saying it always leads, and I'm not saying it never lags. I'm saying I'm not sure you can make a straight one-to-one comparison on that. So anyways, we have the program. The ink's not even dry on it yet. It's what municipalities asked for. We said yes. I feel good about that. I think we should let it play out. If you're saying keep an eye on that, okay, that's fair. We should keep an eye on that to see if turns out to be lagging too much. Fair enough, but I respectfully just can't outright accept that there's a lag, because there's more elements to the province's revenue than just population. And I think you would probably even agree with that.
Yes, I would definitely agree with you on that. And like the personal income tax, for example, tracks very closely with household income growth. For example, which household income growth is inflation plus population growth plus whatever real wage growth that we get. And so with that, I guess, when it comes to ideas around affordable housing, especially, you know, the province does own a lot of land in municipalities, you know, and yet turning that land into housing, even if the province wanted to do it, which you know, if it's not if it's not used for any particular purpose right now, which is something I would certainly be in favor of, does get bound up in municipal red tape. Is that something that, again, like going back to the whole idea of making sure that we're keeping pace with population growth and housing construction, again, is that a potential lever?
We need to consider all these things. I'm not arguing with your idea to consider that.
Okay.
But if you're gonna ask me what's in the legislation, I just flat can't answer it. I'm so sorry.
Okay. All right. I have 55 seconds left, and
It's up to you.
I think I'll send everyone home. Thank you very much for your
thank you
time,
very
Minister. I really appreciate it.
Then I'll, Chair, with your permission, I'll thank everybody from all sides here. I'll definitely thank my staff who did all the work and helping me get ready for this, and I'm very grateful to all of them and all of you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we'll advise the committee the time allotted for the considerations of the ministry estimates has concluded. I'd like to remind committee members that we are scheduled to meet tomorrow, Thursday, March 21st, 2024 at 9 a.m. Consider the estimates of the Ministry of Affordability and Utilities. Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.
Almost done.
Yes.